Well, well, what's going on? Are we live? Are we live?
Hey,
Huh? Oh, hey.
you're the Kool-Aid guy.
Yeah,
What are you doing?
just waiting.
For what?
I'm just waiting, dude. Relax. Hey, is there any place around here that sells batteries? Guys, don't distract me, all right? I gotta really be up.
So there's no organs or glands or anything, right? It's just a liquid?
Yeah, it's just a liquid.
I don't know if this is a weird question, but can I have some?
All right, fine. Tilt your head back and I'll lean my liquid down into your mouth.
Oh, now I don't want it.
Oh, crap. Did I miss it?
No, you did not miss it because we didn't even start yet. We're starting the show right now, and I think we're live. I hope we're live. We better be live. So, are you ready, Kool-Aid? We got another great interview here today. We're ready. We're ready for another great guest. Are you ready? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, listen, just like Kool-Aid right before, just like every single time that we start a show, we got to say hello. We got to say hello to the chat. We got to make sure that we acknowledge all the fantastic people that come and spend their time. Why they spend their time with us, I don't know, but they spend their time with us, and I have to be grateful for that. So let's start off. GT Key Comic, hello. GT Key Comic, hello. Bleecker Street, hello, my man Bleak. Hello, Brooklyn Born. As always, love having my fellow New Yorkers in here. John Stout, love you, my friend. Tricky. Always coming up with something. Yeah, I love Tricky. Poking Joe, of course. Collector P. How you doing, my man? And everybody else that's coming in here, and whoever is not coming in here in the replay or whatever, and the worm, and we even worms. So thank you, worm. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Okay. We I think we did all the hellos we could possibly do. Hello. Good evening. All right. So let's play the intro. That's what we have to do. We have to play an intro. That's how we do it. All right, we're about to start the show. What do you guys think of the intro? Is it an appropriate intro for this show? I hope it is. And I'm going to tell you something else. Before I get started and I introduce our guest, I just want to take one quick second to acknowledge and to thank my mod extraordinaires, BFID and Katie K-pop. Happy birthday, by the way, one day later. Who've been helping me out enormously, not only with Insomniac, with these interviews. Without them, the show would be even shittier than what it is. So I appreciate you so much. So last hellos, Kyle. Always love having you here. Los S, thank you for joining us. And that's it. No more hellos. We'll save the hellos for the end of the show. Just like every show, we're gonna leave the Q&A towards the end of the show for the Q&A segment. And I'll look at your questions and I'll try my very best to acknowledge them throughout the interview, but I can't promise I'll get to everybody, but I will get it to everybody at the end where it's Q&A segment. That's why we have a Q&A segment, and we don't just have just willy-nilly questions where we're going to have a one-on-one interview with the only, the man named Bronze Age Nerd. The Bronze Age Nerd. What the hell?
Hello.
What the hell? What? Wait.
It's me.
Wait. Whoa, what the hell just happened?
I'm just here to do my interview, Comic Journey.
What's going on here?
What do you mean?
Wait. I think I got like
I think I need a
double vision
cigarette.
right now. I think I got double vision right now. There's something going on that's wrong right now.
Oh yeah.
Wait, I don't know what's going on right now.
What do you mean?
Am I having? Is everybody else having issues with their screens? I'm seeing double vision right now. Something wrong right now.
Looks fine on my end.
What the fuck is going on over here? What the? I'm me.
I'm me.
But I'm me.
But I'm me.
But I'm me.
No, but I'm me and you're you, and we're both here.
Oh no. Listen, I already got trolled. By Comic Tom and Fire Guy Ryan with this. Now you're playing me as me. How's that possible? How can you be there when I'm here?
Because I'm the best.
Holy crap, this guy with his visual effects. Holy crap. Look at this, Mr. Technology. How'd you manage to do that?
I don't reveal my secrets. Maybe after the show, if you're nice.
Oh my God, I don't believe this. What the hell's going on? Why am I getting trolled week after week by my guests?
I mean, it was really hard. Like after Tom and Fire Guy Ryan, I had to one up somehow, and that's what I came up with.
Well, you confused the hell out of me by showing me.
Good. It went off as planned then.
Well, it's one thing if I saw a guy with a Green Lantern shirt playing around with the Kool-Aid Man, but you showed me. That's you're sneaky. That's right. Bronze is a sneaky one. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
As everybody knows, Bronze is not only one of our community's best. He's also been a friend to the show for a while now, which makes it nice because we've talked about a lot of stuff on the show at all different times. And we never really had a one-on-one interview without, somebody interfering and jumping into the conversation and showing off 100 books of their own. I have been on your show, but, I get muted a lot. That's how it usually works. But this, this is going to be a nice casual conversation, giving everybody a chance to know who the real Bronze Age nerd is. Who is Christopher? Who is this man with the beard? Who is this ZZ Top Amish hybrid man over here? What's going on over here? Well, since we're on that topic, why don't we start off with that?
Sure.
We kind of know an origin story from you, but I'm going to let you give you a couple of minutes just to introduce yourself as far as who you are and why you started. But I want you to finish off by telling us what the story with this beard is. I want to know the story with this beard.
Okay.
Why? Because you have a very special shape to it too. You got like two little points at the bottom. It's a little different from everybody else. So you don't have that like full fluff. You got the pointy, like a devilish thing going on at the bottom. I want to know all about it. So I'm sure everybody else does too.
Sure. Well, I'll go kind of basic overview then. I'm a comic book collector from the Pacific Northwest. I've lived here my whole life across Washington, Oregon, Idaho. I've been collecting comic books since I was about 7, seriously. Started off getting into comics. My dad would bring home G.I. Joe comic books for me from his work trips that he'd take around the Northwest. He was a forester. He'd have to do a lot of like traveling to different plots of land. And yeah, he'd bring comic books back. I've collected comic books my entire life. I would never say I've been like, you know, the encyclopedia of knowledge for comic book lore or anything like that. I have my areas of expertise that I'm more well versed in, but I would say that I've just had a very general interest in comic books, comic book culture for a long time. And then when I took a job as a data analyst, and it was a very dry, boring, staring at spreadsheets job every day. And then combined with what happened in 2020, with the onset of the pandemic and lockdown and all that, I had just moved to a small town. I live in a town, there's about 600 people that live here. And, you know, I'm miles and miles and miles away from like a comic book shop or any place to get comic books. And I just was feeling really disconnected from comic books. I was feeling really disconnected from people. And for a long time, I've been wanting to start a YouTube channel. Several different topics came to mind that I was going to start a YouTube channel on, including all the way from action figures and Lego to firearms. I have a lot of interests, and I was just like, what do I do here? What do I do?
Hold on, firearms.
Yeah.
This is the first I'm hearing of that. You're into firearms as well?
I mean, I used to be a manager at a gun store, and you know, I've hunted my whole life. But you know, I live in the Pacific Northwest. It's kind of a normal thing around here for the most part. So yeah, that was one of my interests. Although, you know, a little bit before I would have started my channel, YouTube kind of locked down any content. You're not going to make any ad revenue. They're not going to promote your content. So I was like, well, that seems like kind of a dead end. If I was doing something like that, I would want to do like a fun channel that, you know, was going outdoors all the time, that kind of stuff. And since I wasn't going outdoors all the time, I said, well, let's go to the exact opposite. Let's go to comic books. And it was really a struggle for me to figure out, do I want to do comic book lore and reviews, or do I want to tackle just like kind of, well, I was starting my journey about like submitting comic books to CGC. So that was kind of the first track I took. I've been watching channels like Comic Tropes. I watched a little bit of Comic Tom. I'd watched Very Gary was actually a fairly big inspiration for like the whole CGC thing. And I thought, oh, okay, I could just start doing content around that. And then as I started doing like hauls and all that kind of stuff, I was like, you know, the market's going crazy. And I think I have a unique take on collecting, playing devil's advocate, speculation. Why don't I try approaching that content? And that's kind of really where my channel kind of went to the second level, I feel like. And then as far as the beard, which, you know, it's featured pretty prominently in my logo and everything. And I was extremely honored to win the Community Comic Book Award for Best Beard in the community,
We're not going to mention that award. We're not going to mention that award.
Well, I want a very specific portion of it.
We will talk about the other award, but that award is not something that I'm still digesting that. I'm still digesting that. For everybody that doesn't know, Bronze Age Nerd did win the best beard, mustache, hair, and hands. Show them your hands. Show them your hands. Hands award. Okay. He did win it. It is official through the CBC awards. I will give him the credit on the fur, all the fur he has on him, but I'm still not digesting the whole hands part. Okay. But more importantly, he did win. He did win Best Spec Channel of over
the one I cared about out of the two I was nominated for. This was a nice extra. Winning for this was fun. I don't know that I deserved it. In all honesty, like I feel like there's some other truly great, like Comic Man Andy to me deserves for a better beard than me, just based on my impression of life. I believe I voted for Tylox in that category. I'm pretty sure out of the people who were nominated. I could be wrong. I might have nominated him, but I either nominated or voted for him.
Well, there are a lot of furry people around the community.
Exactly. It's like a cliche at this point.
There's a lot of furry people. I even have a beard, but I don't flaunt it like you do.
Did you want to hear the origin of the beard?
That's what I was going to say. So let's get into the beard. What's going on with this beard?
So It started out about 6 years ago. I started on a journey towards bettering my mental and physical health. And especially when it comes to physical health, I'm an overweight guy. I really wanted to start getting healthier. And for most of my 30s, I had kind of that Riker style, like corporate beard, kind of that short trim beard. And I'd had that and I kind of let it grow out over a winter, like to maybe about twice as long as I would normally keep it at. And I started going to the gym and I started exercising. And I just kind of said to myself, I had done an experiment where I grew my hair out. And what I didn't realize about my hair until I started growing it out is once it gets to a certain point, my hair gets curly. It's pretty straight until it gets to a certain point, then it gets curly. And so I grew my hair out down to my shoulders, and it just it was not a good look for me. Not a good look at all. Like I wanted like cool straight hair. And the reason I wanted it was mostly to hide my face. I didn't have good mental health. I didn't feel good about myself. I wanted to hide. And so the hair experiment failed. So I'm trying this. And I said, screw it. I'll grow a beard out and I'll see how long I can get. It was kind of, I think that was kind of starting to become trendier around that time too. And I was like, all right, why not? Let's try it. And I grew a very nice beard. I would say about twice as long, or sorry, twice as nice, not twice as long. It was longer, but twice as nice as what I have now. For one thing, I had less salt and pepper, which I think helped its appearance. And I had like a bigger mustache and all this kind of stuff. But then 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, my daughter was born. And for the first couple of weeks, I was holding her. And when you have a kid and you're feeding them and you're holding them and you're looking down lovingly at them and your beard hairs are getting in their eyes, you realize this thing's got to go. I could either, put it in a little ponytail and tuck it in my shirt, or I could get rid of it. And so I shaved it all off until it was a very short beard again, until pretty much the beginning of the pandemic. And I started to grow it out. And being less healthy mentally and physically, it does not look as nice. I let it grow out natural, which is something I shouldn't have done. Like I wasn't trimming my cheeks or anything like that. So when I finally did decide to trim it, I went overboard and I probably over trimmed it. And yeah, I have a weird thing where like the middle of my beard just does not grow. It grows in where the other hairs grow kind of out, like I would call normal. But the hairs from like the bottom of my chin want to grow into my chest, which kind of hides them. And I can kind of fluff it out a little bit, but it kind of creates...
That's not by design. That's a natural thing you got going on.
Natural, yeah.
I thought you purposely trimmed yourself to look like that.
And see, like I wanted like that nice straight like facial hair, and I was hoping I look at, of course, like a dummy. I should have realized that that's not how my face hair is going to grow in, because that's not how my head hair grew in. So it started to get kind of curly and wavy, and I use like a heated comb to kind of straighten it a little bit. But it's pretty wild. I would love to have a much more well-groomed beard. And if I achieve my weight loss goals that I've been trying to achieve for a while, I'll probably shave it off and then maybe start to grow it out with a new goal in mind or something like that. But it was kind of the idea, was whenever I reached my goal, I would get rid of it finally.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm digging it. I'm definitely digging it. If I was you and I had a lovely beard like you do, I'd probably do comic shows where I'd hide comics inside my beard and pull them out every episode.
I did do that on a live stream. I hid that Marvel Series 1 Stan Lee card. I hid a card in my beard for that show. I think I was on with Laura from Bird City Comics, and she was talking, like, I think she says about, you ever hide something in your beard? And so I just like hid a card up there, then pulled it out, and yeah, you can do it.
It's freaked everybody out at that point.
Yeah.
And what kind of hair product do you use in your hair? Is there any special beard cream that you use? Any kind of like special gel?
Sure.
Moisturizer.
So
for all the bearded people out there, they need that help.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the other thing is I was doing it religiously when I grew a beard before, and now I've been, for people that don't know, I'm a stay-at-home dad. When you have a young toddler, for most of the time I had the beard, their schedules can get a little wild. Your own grooming, if you're a full-time stay-at-home dad, your whole grooming routine, taking showers at regular times, all that kind of stuff, kind of starts to go out the window because you focus so much on your kid. And you kind of get breaks for yourself where you can. At least that's how it goes for me. And so one of the things that happened is I wasn't, doing the proper beard care, which to me is when you take a shower, you use a beard wash. So I use like a beard wash that has some good essential oils in it, argan oil, that kind of stuff in it. And then I use a beard oil. I should do it every day, or at least maybe even twice a day to prevent like split ends and stuff like that. But I end up doing it like once every few days, which is terrible. Things like almond oil and avocado oil and again, argan oil is a really great one. All natural stuff. And you just get a few drops and you work it into your skin because that's really what you're trying to do. And then I do a little bit on the tips and a little bit on the mustache. And there you go.
See, you're a beard fluencer.
The biggest thing is for people that are like, oh, I can never grow a beard like that. Yeah, you could. You're just not willing to deal with the awkward phase of growing it out most of the time. I mean, even people like I have, patches that don't get filled in as much or whatever, but you grow it long enough and it doesn't matter.
My God, there's so much work entailed in that.
There's really not, though.
No,
there's less work involved in this than there was on my head here.
That sounds like so much work. I don't want to deal with it. I'll listen to you deal with it. You do it. No. All right, enough beard talk.
Sure.
All right. We got that out of the way. Everybody wanted to know about the beard. It's a super important. For all the our furry friends out there, they like to hear some advice from other bearded friends, and you got it. But let's get into the stuff, the other stuff, the stuff that we're
the boring stuff.
We're comic book guys.
Yeah.
So let's talk about comic book stuff.
Sure.
Pop culture stuff, nerd stuff. Speaking of nerd stuff, you call yourself the Bronze Age nerd.
Yeah.
And that's because you were born in the Bronze Age.
Yep. Which is always a point of concern of mine because I do sell comic books. And every time people are like, where's all the Bronze Age stuff? And which I would love to have a bunch of Bronze Age stuff to sell. I mostly sell from my personal collection almost entirely. Well, literally, I do, but I buy some stuff just to sell. And I don't have a whole lot of Bronze Age. I wish I had more Bronze Age stuff, but I was born in 82. Kind of date myself for everybody here. Just turned 40 earlier this year. And yeah, so I was born kind of at the tail end of the Bronze Age. And at the time, I was looking around names of comic book channels. I was like, well, I got to have a name that isn't the same as everybody else, right? The thing I almost did is I almost used my real name and just made my channel my name, which I've thought about going towards actually, because I think it's maybe a little bit more exciting. Hey, I know that guy, not his moniker, and I could still always call myself that if I wanted to.
You could,
but yeah,
or you could just call yourself Chris, the Bronze Age nerd.
I could do that. I have a really long, weird last name, so I thought about using my middle name maybe and just being like, I am this, but we'll see if I do that. But yeah, so I'm the Bronze Age nerd, and I was born in the Bronze Age, and it's haunted me ever since because then I found Bronze and Modern Gods, and Bronzeville comics, and there's just all these bronze people, but I just didn't find them. When I searched in YouTube, none of those names came up for me. That was my first experience learning that YouTube search is very biased and picky.
True.
Yeah.
Well, I'm more concerned at the fact that not that you sell non-Bronze Age books, that there's something a little bit fraudulent about your name.
Is there?
There is. You are technically born in the Bronze Age. However, you collected during the Copper Age.
Sure.
So are you really a Bronze Age nerd? Or are you a Copper Age nerd?
Well, here's what I would say. I am of the Bronze Age. I am a Bronzed Age nerd. Bronze Age nerd, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I'm if a comic book came out in the Bronze Age, but it gained popularity in the Copper or Modern Age, do you call it a Copper or a Modern, or do you call it a Bronze Age book?
See, these are the little things that little things that they're technicalities. But you're clever though, because you did marry a Copper Age babe.
Mm-hmm.
That somewhat balances out your names in a little way.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, so some people that watch my stuff know that there is a lost video that was recorded with the Copper Age babe. She's never appeared on camera. She recorded a video with me. Unfortunately, we had a few technical issues, some audio stuff. Also, because we only had one mic, we were trying to share it. So sometimes you couldn't hear her very well when we were trying to, we should have done a test recording and then listened to it and see how it went. We didn't do that. And also it just kind of like, it was a super long video. I had to cut it down to make it watchable because we just kept giggling and laughing and like, how are we going to do this or whatever? But we were trying to do like a bracket elimination. for all the different, best character with this trait. And the first one we did was best booty in comic books. And so we went to go do that video, and she's like, what should I call myself? Should I just call myself by my name? How do we want to do this? She's like, you're the Bronze Age nerd. And I said, well, she's like, should I be the Bronze Age something, Bronze Age geek or something like that? And I said, well, to me, you should be, if anything, the Bronze Age babe, but you weren't born in the Bronze Age. So I said, how about, kind of like Copper, I think Copper Age Kids, an account that's out there. I said, how about Copper Age babe? And she liked it. And so we went with that.
Clever guy. So you see, everybody, not only is he clever with trolling me, he's clever in a lot of different ways. But it's what the hell? What the hell just happened?
What are you talking about?
What's going on here?
Oh, let me check my messages. No. Oh, okay. I see what happened. Sorry about that. Whew.
You gotta stop this, man. You gotta stop. You're giving me vertigo. You're making me feel like I'm in freaking the Twilight Zone. I don't know what's right and what's wrong. I don't know what's up and what's down. You can't do that to me.
That's cruel.
It's awful. It's awful. I don't even know what clip you got that from, but
very recent. Let me put it that way.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
From last night.
Oh wow. Oh my god.
I remember what shirt you were wearing. I love it. I could have went mean and gone for the picnic shirt, but I decided not to.
Yeah. Notice no picnic shirt today. No picnic shirt.
By the way, I like the picnic shirt.
So. No picnic shirt. We're not doing the picnic shirt anymore.
I get it.
I did wear a button down for you because today is it's a formal interview. It's not like a loosey goosey insomniac. So, but it's not about me. It's about you today. Usually it's about me, but not today. Hello, Kenneth. You started off in a very similar time format as me. And you started off in a way that was very traditional as far as your type of content that you were doing. You gradually started to evolve in a different way, which kind of made you a little different from everybody else. Sometimes not necessarily the popular thing to do, but you started going more as far as making your picks of not to buy. You started to say stuff that's not so much hoorah as far as promoting and pumping and dumping stuff and pushing and that kind of stuff, which is odd because you do sell comics, and you would expect somebody that sells comics to basically do a pump and dump, like you basically promote, hurrah, on to the next one. What made you take that different path? Do you feel that there was a conflict of interest? Do you feel that it was just you that made you want to go down that path? What is it that made you go down that basically counterculture type of way of talking about weekly comics and monthly comics and that kind of a thing?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of one of the most interesting parts of what happened in my journey on the comic book YouTube scene was, okay, I'm not buying as many comic books, doing haul videos all the time. Like, it's fun. But I kind of feel like, at a certain point, I've done what I can do with that. I'm not going to keep doing CGC submission after CGC submission. I'm not going to go out buy collections. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but it's just not something that was in the cards at the time for me. So I just wasn't doing that. So what else can I do? Well, I started doing two things. I'd always done the segment called Bronze Buys, and that was kind of what my normal videos were. I also did a segment called Nerd News, which was me covering current events in comic books or pop culture, new action figures that were coming out, new comic lines, big events in comic books, right? MCU stuff. And I enjoy doing that quite a bit. But at the end of the day, it's like there's only so much that you can really do, and I like to have a few irons in a few different fires at the same time. And I started to really ask myself, like, okay, what interests me? Like, what is interesting to me in comic books right now? And instead of trying to do because one of the goals of my channel was always to make content that the people that bothered to subscribe to me, I wanted to make videos they wanted to watch. And because I'm already accomplishing the goals I have for myself by doing this channel, which is, you know, kind of getting over some social anxiety, doing some video production, learning new skills. All right, well, what do people actually want to watch from me? And I got positive results, but not like a lot of views or whatever from the nerd news stuff. The bronze buy stuff, it just depended. If somebody was into what I did, or I made a good thumbnail that way, people watched, I felt like, but it wasn't really like driving people to keep watching my videos. So I could tell like they're probably not super into that. And at the same time, I was in all these little circles of comic collectors talking online, like many of us are. And the thing that I heard over and over and over and over and over and over again from these different groups, and I will single them out. This is what I was hearing. I'm not saying this is how I necessarily feel, but the thing I heard over and over and over again was key collector, market manipulation, key collector, pumping prices, key collector. Why are they picking these books? I just kept hearing that over and over and over again. And I kind of arrived at what my reason for thinking that was the case was. And I started looking at like CBSI Hot 10 and other hot lists. And there were actually, at the time, it's funny, they've kind of faded away. There were more YouTubers making those kind of top 10 lists. A lot of them have kind of backed off as sales have started to slump, right? And the space is so saturated. But I was like, well, I love talking about this kind of stuff, and I love playing devil's advocate. So, you know, at a certain point, like, what is my real thought on these lists? And I'd look at them every week. I actually I'm a premium member to Key Collector. I get the Thursday preview for the trending 20, and I look at it, and I'm always like, makes sense, super obvious, makes sense, super. What the hell? Okay, whatever. What increase in sales? Like, according to who? Like, in what way? What were the sales? Like, we don't know. And I would look at these, and these ones would stick out to me. And then I would do the same thing for CBSI Hot 10 and Cover Price Top 10 and all that. And I kind of just said, like, you know, these lists come out every week, and everybody gets pissed off about certain books, or they just rush to sell those books, or they rush to go buy those books, which to me is the worst part of that equation, rushing to go buy the books, because that is the definition of FOMO spending. And there's been a kind of a conversation recently about whether or not FOMO spending is good or not. And
Let me just pause you for a second.
Sure, yeah.
On the FOMO spending, was there some certain FOMO experience that you experienced that got you thinking that way?
So I've had it happen a few times. In fact,
did you get really burned on one of these kind of things where you're like, damn it, you know what? I'm sick of this crap. I'm going to start talking about it. Because I almost kind of get that. I'm getting almost like the vibe that you either feel like it's almost like you get a personal like satisfaction of hitting the devil's advocate, and as far as just seeing people's reactions as far as what they are going to say about it, or there was truly an experience that you felt like endured yourself, that you said, I've had enough. I've had enough with this.
Actually, I mean, to be honest, it's neither.
Oh, wow.
It might be a little bit of both, and then another factor. It's not that, you know, that I enjoy taking that role.
I do.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. There's only one kind of content that I make occasionally that I really get that kind of feeling about, where I just enjoy it. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so proud of what I did, or I'm so happy that people are watching what I did. And those are interviews. For the rest of the stuff, it's almost like these are my personal demons I'm working out or whatever, in a way. And once they're out and I'm done editing them and all that stuff, I'm done with the video. And then, you know, you kind of, you know, comment maintenance, that kind of thing. And it's interesting to see what people think. And I do want people to enjoy the videos, but at the same time, I just want to get the video out there and kind of move on. And I feel that way every week about the top 5 not to buy that I make. It's not like I enjoy, like, the part that sucks actually is seeing people come in and be like, you know, this list sucks and you're just a hater. And it's like that. No, honestly, like, you know, if I was a hater, I would call it the top 20 not to buy, and I would just talk about every book on the Key Collector Trending 20 and why it's a terrible investment or whatever. I actually think that most weeks, there's probably 5 really solid books that would be a good book to own at that time. But the overall trending thing that I see, not trending, recurring thing that I see is that when that list comes out is the worst time to buy any of those books. Even the hottest book in the world that, unless you saw it in the first second and you grabbed the last copy that was already up on eBay or wherever you go, an LCS is completely separate, because if they don't reprice their books very often, sure, you can still find those good deals. But I'm talking about the people that just run out and, run out to Whatnot, eBay, etc., and they just buy right away. Unless you happen to scoop up the last couple copies, the price is already starting to go up. And even if it's a good investment, it may not be like a quick flip good investment. So unless you're prepared to sit on that book for, 2 years until the movie comes out, or 5 years until the movie comes out, or whatever it might be, if it's movie based, it's not usually a good investment. So that's kind of like the one side of it. The other side of it is, did I get burned? And there's a couple that I've definitely, went out and FOMO bought. I don't think nothing where I like lost a lot of money or really ended up holding, a book that I didn't want. That's one thing, is like, if I ever go after a book like that, it's usually something that I'm comfortable owning that book because it's a cool book, or, it's a cool character, or it's a fun comic to have in the collection. So I'm very careful when it comes to that for myself. And so it's really neither of those things. It's really more about, do I think there needs to be a voice out there kind of counterpointing all the pump, all the hype, all that, and I do think there's space for that. And I was like, well, I'm willing to fill that space and, kind of take one for the team, so to be, and be the negative guy or whatever, and talk about it. And plus, that is in my nature. I am a devil's advocate by nature.
It suits you very well, especially with the devil beard that you have on there. So, you got your devil beard, you got the devil's advocate. Well, how could you go wrong with that?
Right.
But I just had a personal feeling that may have been what it was that kind of like got you, because I know for myself, I've gotten burned not once, a couple of times. But I'm also a gambler when it comes to buying books. I like to buy bundles. I like to, I like to buy on eBay. That's always a gamble. So, it's, it's very relatable, the material that you actually put on there. And I'm sure that there's a lot of other people on there that are related. And as far as the haters that come on there that are like all upset and accusing you of being a hater, that's actually great. That's great. That means that they're watching it enough to hate it.
I mean, from a certain perspective, I know that you could make the argument like no such thing as bad press, or any, the YouTube terminology version of that, any engagement is positive engagement. I don't really worry about that so much. To me, it's more of just like, I don't mind if somebody doesn't agree with the list I put out and they think like, oh, you're stupid, that's a great investment. That's fine. Like, awesome. I want to hear your reasons why. What gets me is kind of this knee-jerk reaction of like, this comment I've got before, like a couple times, like, you're just mad because you didn't buy it. And it's funny because a couple times that's happened. I already own the book in question. And to your point earlier, like, if I had a different mindset, I would be like, yeah, I'm glad that's on the Key Collector Turning 20, because now I can sell it for more. Because I do sell for my personal collection, depending on the book, right? Some books are just untouchable. I'm not going to sell them. So it's really just kind of this, I wish people understood the motivation, but you can't make everybody see the reason why you're doing it. And also, to be fair, I'm saying that, and I hope people believe me, because I think I've backed up my actions with, my words with my actions. But I also could be lying. So that, I understand that too, that people have to be a little skeptical, and I don't blame them for that at all.
Well, you take everything with a grain of salt.
Right.
Because, whatever's said on YouTube, it has to be real because it's on YouTube, right?
Exactly. That's how it works.
Somebody said it. It has to be true. They made a video about it. It has to be true,
Yeah.
No, it's buyer beware on anything that you watch. And, what you're doing, you're not a financial analyst. You're not sitting there at Wall Street telling people how to spend their money left and right. You're giving your opinion. And the truth be said, it's entertainment.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly what not only am I literally not telling people how to spend their money. I'm literally telling them how they shouldn't spend their money, if anything. But on the other side of that is, I realized after doing it for a few months, hey, I need to like hold myself accountable to this a little bit, because it's one thing to like, the comments were filtering in, and I told you at one point too. So it's funny, some of those comments, a couple of them stuck out to me, or the names were familiar, and I would like kind of go back and look at those people, and found out that they were resellers. And in a couple of cases, I found out they were selling the books I was talking about not to buy, and that may have played a large part in why they would want to leave a comment like, "You're wrong," I mean. And then the other part of it is just, I thought, okay, well, I can't just put this information out there and then take no responsibility for it. So I'm going to do what I wish places like Key Collector did, or more importantly, the hot lists, right? Like, you take a lot of the Key Collector information filters down to, like, say, Comic Tom 101, and they talk about it with Gem Mint and everything. And they talk about the hot comics and all that stuff and the trending 20. Follow it up with what the price is. How did that do? What if you actually invested in that comic book? So that's what I do, and I've been doing for a while now. Is it used to be 3 months later, but with so many videos, I changed it to 6 months later, and 1 year later, I go back and look at those comic books and see how they performed, and the ones that I chose. And it's crazy how, frankly, how right I've been. There's been maybe a couple instances where books they've stayed relevant, but I wouldn't say like you'd be like thrilled if you went out and spent the money for like these big 1 in 50s that were like $100 at the time, or $150 at the time, or anything like that. So I don't know. I feel pretty good about that track record after doing the follow-up videos for almost a year now.
Well, my impression is that you're kind of anti these ratios in general, as far as the quick evaluations that you see, the jump ups on them and the variant covers and that kind of thing. Am I right about that?
It's a careful line that I try to tread, because I'm critical of the sheer, like, what was the book I just talked about the other day? Something is Killing the Children 16 had, and I'm counting trade and variant and virgin variants here. So there's a little bit of doubling up, but it's not, it still would have been like 30 plus covers, but it's like 49, 50 covers for that book. That's nuts.
For number 16.
For number 16. Which it is a key. It's the origin of Erica Slaughter. It's the first appearance of Jessica Slaughter. But
who cares?
Yeah, well, like, you can talk about like, oh, we're limited to 1,000, virgins and 3,000 trade dresses. But when there's 10 other covers like that, and the art's all pretty good, really, then you've lost all kind of, comic books. People need to understand, for a comic book to be valuable, there has to be interest and desirability for what it is. That could be the cover, the key, doesn't matter. There has to be interest. And there also has to be some rarity. And if you don't have those two things, and you have just a bunch of people buying up the book and then hoping that it'll get hot to be sold again, Something is Killing the Children number 1 is truly a lower print, rarer book, right? Something is Killing the Children 16 with that many covers is not. It's also not as important of a key. To me, it's just insanity. So yeah, but at the same time, I'm very cognizant of the factor that a lot of like variants and ratios and exclusives help get artists work and help get artists discovered and exposed. So I would never go around saying like, I think it's all bad. I wish there was only one cover for each book or something like that. But I do wish that we kind of spread it out a little bit more. Like, a number 1 launching for a new Marvel book, it's going to have 10 to 15 different variants and exclusives out there. I wish we kind of spread that out along the run. And even if it wasn't a key, or even if it wasn't the number 1 issue, we kind of let it get spread out, so that there was maybe 2 or 3 variants for each book, which for Marvel, that's always the case, I guess. And then like 1 or 2 exclusives or ratios or something like that. Instead of having some books that have 50, let's kind of just even it out across the line a little bit, so that, especially for completionists, like if you're somebody who does feel like you need to buy all the versions of that cover, good luck. You're going to go broke fast collecting.
Well, it makes it very tough to become a completionist in this market today. Very, very tough.
Yeah.
You got to have very deep pockets in order to be able to do that. And you have to have a lot of room as well.
Yep.
Forget about the money. You got to have a whole house just to fill up with all these variants.
Yeah.
There's too many out there. And you spread out the interest too much. Which is the book? If you got 49, 50 copies of a certain book, which is the book that's important?
Yeah.
Everybody's going to have their favorite. And
Right.
and you quickly touch something about a lot of the haters that actually would comment, and you find out that they're sellers. Here's the problem. You have certain sellers that hoarded a certain copy of a certain book or a certain variant of a certain book, or they're pulling out their own exclusive and they're all pushing that. And it's all artificial hype that's happening right now on
Yeah.
a lot of these books. So it's a very, very weird, dangerous slope that we're going to. We did slightly touch that in the 90s. We'd slightly touched that in the 90s. Gen 13 was probably the most infamous one of those covers where they came out with 13 covers.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went into the massive decline of the market where they gradually dropped the print counts on everything. And then in order to gain and bring back interest, they started allowing exclusives to happen. And that's when basically everything got derailed as far as being able to collect in a conventional certain way, in a traditional comic book way.
Yeah.
You're always going to feel like you're missing out on something right now. If there's 8 different covers of a certain book and you pick out one of them, and then all of a sudden you discover there's another 7, you kind of feel like, I got this one, but I like that one better. And then
Right.
what happens then?
Well, and also that one might be 7 times more expensive out of the gate because it's being presented as a premium limited exclusive, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like I don't look at a shop that does that and go, they're terrible or awful for doing that. I just wish that they kind of considered from the collector's perspective a little bit how that works. And oh yeah, by the way, actually, so you just highlighted Hylia's comment. I did want to address that real fast because I saw that. So for he, and I've mentioned this on one of his live streams that he did. He is definitely an inspiration for why I took my top 5 not to buy, and I started doing the follow-ups on him. I was like, well, he's following up his. He's kind of he's mostly just checking the Key Collector Trending 20 and all those different hot lists.
Top 10.
Yeah. And so that was definitely part of the inspiration for why I started doing my own personal kind of look backs on the books I chose. And I love his content too. He does a great job. He's kind of, one of the few guys that's kind of, I feel like, in a somewhat similar space with that kind of mentality, right?
Absolutely.
And he presents it in a great way too. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, for these exclusives, like is there, it's almost like it's a manufactured scarcity that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing to have manufactured scarcity, but to have it all the time, like there are people that's like a dopamine hit for them when they're able to get one. It's kind of like sneakerheads when there's a limited exclusive, type of sneaker out there, that kind of stuff. And that's just a big part of why I feel the way I do about this kind of stuff. It's not like I want to tell anybody they're wrong for wanting to do that, but I want to get them to ask themselves the question, is this really what I want? Like if you're a comic book collector, and I made a lot of types of videos on this collecting strategy kind of stuff. Do you ever think about what you want your collection to look like when you're 5 years from now looking back on what you've collected and you're looking at all your boxes full of comic books? Because people go after cool cover buys and chasing the hot new thing, and then they never plan on selling it, which is fine. That's great. That's a very purist way to do it. I don't think it makes you better than anybody else if you don't want to sell your stuff, but I certainly don't think it makes you bad. But if you're buying it thinking like, this is going to be worth a lot of money someday, but you never plan on selling it, what are you doing? I don't get it.
It's not worth anything unless you sell it.
Right. And I mean, and especially because by the time that, maybe somebody in your family gets the books on their hands, and I hate to put it that way, but that's something a lot of people don't think about. What are they going to do with it? Like, is that, Daredevil 150 really going to be worth big bucks in 30 years? It could be, but what are the odds that, every 1 in 50 that came out from Marvel in 2022 would be worth a lot of money in 30 years? Pretty low.
Well, here's the thing. A $4 or $5 comic that comes out today, in 20 years, if it's worth $10, is it really worth more?
Right.
Is it?
Right.
It's really not. The inflation.
Yeah. Storing the thing.
It's kind of a moot point at that point. You know, everybody's going to collect the way they want to. You have the completionists, or there's
Yeah.
a great. If I had the space and I had endless amounts of funds, I'd create my own little LCS type of environment in my own house, and I'd be walking in my own like little fake store every day and pretending that I'm selling it to myself. I don't know what I would do. I would play pretend,
That'd be fun.
and I would have fun.
Yeah.
But I'm not in that position, and many other people out there are not in the same in that position as well.
Right. I hear from collectors all the time that, you know, they have all these boxes, all these books, they're looking at their collection. And this is where the stories are kind of personal for me, is because, you know, I, like a lot of collectors, I had breaks in my collecting career, right? I had hiatuses where I stepped away from collecting monthly comic books or whatever. You know, I might have still occasionally picked up something here and there, but for the most part, I wasn't reading month-to-month comics, which always, you know, is fun when you get back into it, because then you try to go back and read or collect stuff you missed, right? One of the things that happened to me is when I got back into comic books in like 2020, is I started ordering a lot more books on FOC, because I got into this whole idea of like, well, and I still think this is true in a big way. If you bought the book for less than cover price, because most times you order something on pre-FOC, you're usually getting a discount. I hope you are. Then you've bought it for the lowest possible price that, you know, except for wholesale, that anybody's going to get it for. So great. You know, you've bought in on that. But here's the thing. It's like playing roulette. And if you go to the roulette table and you put your chips on every single space, sure, you'll come up a winner. But depending on how you distributed those chips, you're going to lose more money every time. And so I have this, you know, if you look at like, I track my collection through the CLZ app, and the average age of my comic book collection is so heavily focused on the last few years that it kind of makes me want to puke. And some of those comic books, they're cool. And that's, I look at this all the time. This is the justification I use. And I talk about this. It's like a $3 great piece of art, you know, and I love that, you know, getting a cool variant cover, like a B cover or a C cover, that's cover price or less for this awesome artwork on it. And I still do that. And I'm never going to stop doing that. But I was justifying way too much collecting with that. And I realized, oh my gosh, like this is just going to balloon. And it did, basically. And that's where a lot of the selling comes off. It's like, I just have this stuff that's like, I don't want to own this in 5 years. I want to own this in 10 years. And I don't think it's going to be worth more in that time frame. So let's get it in the hands of somebody who's going to enjoy it more now.
So you put yourself like an artificial cutting, like a line or
a little bit
barrier. Like, I'm not going to get past this many in my current collection or whatever the case is.
Well, it's not so much that as in just like, I've basically, it's not like an easy to describe definitive thing, but in my head, like if I like, I will invest in a comic book that comes out. If I know it's going to be a key and I'm like, I know this is going to be the first appearance of this character. It's on FOC right now. I might go big on that book. And going big for me might be like 5 or 10 copies. Like I'm not 50, not a short box full of comics kind of guy. For one issue. But like I might still invest in that. Or if it's a cover I really like, you know, people know that I do like the booty cover of the week, or it's just something that I think is gorgeous, or just something that really takes me back to why I collect comic books. You know, maybe that's like one book every FOC or so, then I might add it to my list of like Things from Their World or Dangerous Waters comics, or, you know, the places that I pull comic books from. But what my goal is really now is to sell as much of the ultra modern stuff as possible. I want to get my average age of my collection for, you know, the kind of the median age of the comic book in my collection. I want to get that back to like the late copper age, kind of. Preferably Bronze Age would be nice, but so I'm just trying to add more books like that to my collection and kind of offload the stuff that's like, okay, I've flipped past this issue 15 times in my boxes. Every time I've appreciated it, but it's not something that like I need to see again and need to physically own. And I kind of do that weird, like, I can't remember the design decorator that got popular on Netflix a few years ago, but she does this bring me joy? And I look at it, it's like, does this bring me more joy than going after like a book from my X-Men run that I want to get would bring me? No, not really. Okay, well, let's add it to the pile of stuff I'm going to get rid of then.
Makes sense. It makes sense. You know, I'm at that crossroads myself as far as trying to consolidate and put, you know, trim the fat.
Yeah.
Because there's, you know, you get to the point where too much is too much.
Yep.
and everybody's different. Everybody has a different point of where too much is too much, But
Yeah.
it is what it is. That's why we're collectors. That's why we got our little weird little community that we're into, and we're into like hoarding our own little trinkets and paper, because really it's paper that we're hoarding, and we love it. We cherish it. But you got, I guess that's what gave you the initial push to become more of a seller than you were in the past, as far as actively wanting to sell.
Yeah. Yeah, it was that combined with the fact that like um I felt like I could do like an entertaining show where I sell like, the whole like either on my channel or I started out doing Whatnot relatively early on, kind of before it got too crazy. And
Let's get
then
into that. Let's
sure.
get into your whole selling experience and journey, because there's a lot of people out there that are currently selling in different platforms, whether it's Whatnot, Drip, IG, YouTube, whatever the case is,
Mhm.
and a lot of people that are thinking that they want to get into that as well, and a lot of people that don't know what they're getting into when they're trying to get into that phase. So you've gone through every single, I believe, every single phase you could possibly go, whether it's through Whatnot, through Drip, through your YouTube channel, through I think IG even, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I haven't done
Uh,
Facebook, and I haven't like
eBay,
Facebook Marketplace or anything like that. That's probably or Mercari. I haven't done either one of those things, but
eBay.
yeah, eBay, sure, yeah,
Yeah, well, it's interchangeable.
yeah,
Mercari is just basically the redheaded stepchild of eBay.
sure.
Let's be honest about it. So what? Well, it's true. What am I going to
I
tell
don't
you?
disagree.
So why don't you like help everybody like understand your experience through these whole platforms, and maybe some positives and negatives that you experienced through that.
So the biggest thing, as soon as I started selling at all, I think I did my first YouTube auction. I tried to do some IG claims before that, but my IG account was much, much smaller. And I'd kind of just had been posting like cool books. That's all I'd really been doing. And then when I listed a few for sale, I think I sold one person a bunch of the stuff I put up, and that was it. And one person claimed like 5 or 6 books. I was like, cool, that's awesome. And then I did a YouTube auction, and that went actually really well for me. Like I accomplished my goals, I exceeded my goals even. But what I started seeing, this is one element I have to touch on. I started to see kind of some chatter, not like in a very big way, but almost like this. There's this contingent of comic book collectors that are kind of like fundamentalists or purists. And it could be a Venn diagram, right? Like it could be a group of people that's anti-slabbing. It could be a group of people that's anti-pressing, anti-restoration. But here's another huge one: anti-selling comic books. And I did start to see that kind of directed, not necessarily directly at me, but like almost like a dismissal kind of thing, like, well, you sell comic books, or almost like a holier than thou attitude of like, well, I don't sell comic books, is like how they would present themselves. And that's a funny one to me, because in the times that we live in there are Whatnot, there are all those places we just talked about where you can sell your stuff. A lot of people don't have a YouTube channel that is healthy enough to really do like a live auction. I understand that. I'd argue that they could start one, but hey, a lot of people don't think they do. But other than that, people can, anybody can use eBay, anybody can use IG to sell stuff.
Mercari,
Yeah, exactly, right.
in case you like into redheaded stepchild.
And some people are, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. So with kind of like this low barrier to entry here, I really kind of feel like there's almost like there's this weird hypocrisy. So if I pre-order my comic books from a comic shop, like an online comic shop, and let's say I wanted to sell them on Whatnot, that's not what I do, but let's just say that people want to do that. Why would you like automatically like thumb your nose at them and not at your comic book shop? Because that's what they do. They
That's
buy
a
their comic books.
fantastic point. I don't mean to interrupt you, but that is something that always perplexed me. It's
Yeah,
okay to buy comics from a LCS that sells you the comics. It potentially might also be a collector as well,
right. Often are.
but it's not okay if you decide I need to raise some money and sell something off myself.
I don't get it.
It perplexes me beyond belief.
Now, the only thing I would say is that it's kind of, man, it's actually a deep topic. So kind of what would happen like when Whatnot would start first having live streams from conventions, right? It's way more high profile. You are literally seeing it in real time, and if people are overspending for a book, I understand where the knee-jerk reaction comes from there. I get it. But I think it's important to put it in perspective, because what if your comic book shop buys a collection? By the way, and I don't have a problem with this, but we need to be honest with what happens here. Often for pennies on the dollar of the value of that comic book collection.
Mhm.
And maybe in some ways that makes sense because they're taking a lot of bulk that maybe people don't want to buy, but they're getting those few books that are going to pay for the whole value of the collection. And then they maybe they sell the book for the same price in their store.
They're taking the risk.
Nobody really talks about that because it's not as high profile. It's not as obvious, but it still happens. And yeah, they are taking risk. And I am in no way saying, like, I don't want anybody to misconstrue what I'm saying here. I'm not saying that, like, you shouldn't support an LCS. I'm not saying that, everything needs to be taken on its own value, right? Like, some LCSs are fantastic and they need all the support they should get. And if I had one near me, I would be giving them a lot of money every week. But
Except for if they're like the one that you had that experience with.
right, which is that's a little bit different topic, but yeah. But that's the thing, is like there are some shops out there where I don't know that they do need to like be given like special consideration. I want to support LCSs. I want LCSs to be healthy and thriving for decades to come. Mark my words. But I also want to make sure that we hold businesses accountable, and that comes to online sellers too. Online sellers, I'm not saying they should be given a free pass by any stretch of the imagination. Some of them do really scummy stuff and they should be called out. They should be kicked out of the groups that they're involved in if they're doing that, or penalized in whatever way is appropriate depending on that group. eBay is going to be a little bit different than Whatnot. It's going to be a little bit different than YouTube. But there are bad sellers out there. But there's also sellers out there that, like, I know people that they're trying to start their own comic book shop. And this is the path that they decided to take, is, they're like, well, I could get good deals through an online shop, and then eventually get my own Diamond account, and then eventually become my own online shop. And then they're kind of, they're trying to do it like kind of a snowball method to build up towards a comic book shop.
Almost like they used to do in the flea markets.
Yes. And I think that, like, we're often painting these people in a very broad brush of online sellers and flippers and influencers and all these different things. And it's like, for me, I don't mind that we put certain labels on certain things, but I think we should be careful in the logic we use to apply it to each person, because we're talking about a very broad and diverse group of people, and that's kind of where it comes down to me. So that's kind of my little soapbox I had to get onto before we talk about selling comic books. But your question is really more about like, what's my experience been like, and and especially like different places and advice I might have for sellers.
By the way, by redirecting to the actual question, so I don't have to scold you for not answering my question.
Sorry, it's just it's a thing that's kind of like because you got to be understanding that you could receive some of this criticism if you start selling comic books, and maybe that shouldn't deter you. Maybe it does, But I want people to know that that's something that does happen. And more importantly, I've seen it happen to people that I talk very closely with in a way that has very negatively affected them, or their perception of them, at least. So when it comes to selling, I think it all kind of depends, because I've had a different journey. When I first got on Whatnot, it's like I could take any comics I have, and no matter what I put up, it would sell. Might not sell for
It's that easy.
I could just literally grab a short box from my collection if I wanted to. And I didn't do this. What I always do is I always grab a short box that's empty. I go through my collection and I pull, like, maybe I want it to be a theme show. Maybe I want it to be just kind of like variant covers, or maybe I want it to be keys, or maybe I want it to be older comic books, which doesn't happen very often, but it's nice when it can be, whatever. I usually kind of try to build like, and then I add in like, new stuff I've picked up that I know people want or are interested in. I do a lot of the like buy two, one to flip, one for me kind of thing. That's what I do pretty commonly. So I'll have my box and I would put it up there, and man, every single comic book would sell. And it was just like, this is crazy in a way. But I wasn't getting like I never had 100 people in my room on Whatnot or anything like that. I had like 20. I think I had 50 to 60 a couple times, and that was when I was selling adult books. Usually, I would say
Isn't
I
that funny how they all gather around the adult books when they pop up?
Well, and I think maybe because I have I have the booty cover of the week, and I'm willing to talk about comic books that are kind of nude covers and the kind of stuff. Well, it's funny. I actually don't collect a lot of them myself, but I've been I know a lot of people that do, and I kind of had some connections, and I got a few to sell, or I'd buy like the sets that have like the clean cover, the sexy cover, and then the nude cover, and I'd keep like the clean or the sexy one for me, and I'd sell the other two.
But you are a friend of the buttocks.
Yes, 100%. And yeah, unabashedly. And I like, bad girl art, good girl art, cheesecake covers. I like that stuff for sure. Power Girl and all these characters, I love all that stuff for sure. I think it's an important part of comic books. In fact, something I think that, comic books often fans maybe kind of forget about is that adult comic books have been around for a very long time. It has a very well-established history in comic book collecting. Going back, Playboy cartoons or whatever, there's a very old tradition there, even older than that. But anyways, so I was never a huge Whatnot seller, but I was doing this crazy, almost like unsustainable amount of traffic and business. And sure enough, it was unsustainable. And you started to see certain channels kind of float, the cream will rise to the top kind of. You started to see certain channels kind of get huger and huger on Whatnot. I mean, like certain sellers. And then, all of a sudden you had 8 people in your room, and people were buying like one in every 4 or 5 books you put up. And that's when I kind of walked away from Whatnot. And I think that unless you're entering Whatnot with this kind of almost like determined mindset of like, I'm going to give away a bunch of stuff. I am going to, literally lose money, like be a big loss leader for a while to build an audience. I don't think Whatnot's a really good place for most sellers to jump onto for comic books now.
Do you feel that it was an unfair advantage or unbalance between the sellers in there?
It's hard for me to say specifically, but I think there's just this weird sweet spot where some sellers got in, probably about 4 months before I did, where they were about over 1,000 followers or so when kind of things took off for Whatnot at a very specific point. And if you were at that sweet spot, you were getting things like comp packages of like those Invincible books to sell because your name was on the cover. They sent you a couple copies or whatever, one copy. But even one of those books were selling for $200-300. That's that's going to fund for a tiny seller. That can fund a couple shows where you can go out and buy some stuff and afford some giveaways and make things even bigger and, kind of go all out. Like for me, I was,
And you never received any of that? You
No,
never got any kind of support or anything from Whatnot?
Oh, no. The only thing I've ever got from either Whatnot or Drip or anything in regards to selling is Drip occasionally gave me a giveaway credit, which is like, we'll apply. I think there were a couple different ones they did. There was like a small business day one, and there was like a comic book day stream where every seller that agreed to participate in it got like $100 giveaway budget. So I could grab $100 worth of stuff, and I did like 4 or 5 giveaways, like $20 books or some Funko Pops and stuff, and they would send me a credit back onto my account. It wasn't like
nice.
Yeah, and they did it for other sellers too. And they were trying to, Drip is obviously probably half the people in chat. Drip? What's that? It's a much smaller selling platform. They're trying to get, people involved. So
let's transcend into Drip going from Whatnot after you finish your Whatnot experience.
Well, yeah, it's just one of those things where I think that like if you're trying to get into Whatnot right now, unless you have like that kind of budget to really invest in getting that following, you're going to have a hard time succeeding unless you just happen to have like an incredible collection. And there are people out there that do. But I'm thinking like, collectors that are kind of in my similar space, they have a few thousand comic books and they want to sell, 20 to 30% of their collection. And they're just looking to do that. I wouldn't say don't try it because it doesn't cost you anything to try as long as you're starting your books at a price you're comfortable selling them for. But this whole, like, my favorite thing is, well, I started at $1. What happens is what happens. And yes, that is 100% true. And I believe that what happens is on the buyers. But boy, I tell you what, I have started books at $1 before in my shows and been like, holy crap, I can't believe that just sold for $2. Like that is, if I put that on eBay, that would have been a $30 book. And I'm talking like conservatively, right? So I think that's just one of those interesting things you have to realize is don't use, your huge sellers on Whatnot as a template for what you're going to do right out of the gate. Go look at small successful sellers on Whatnot and see what they're doing.
That's a very good point to make. Go to the successful sellers that are under the radar as far as popularity is concerned, that have been there for a while and keep enduring.
Yeah,
those are the ones that set the model. Do you think that you gave up too early on Whatnot? Do you think if you continued with it, you would have gone through the growing pains of it, or do you feel that you got it at the right time?
Yeah, it's absolutely. So I mean, like, it's kind of funny. It's a little bit like my YouTube channel. If I wanted to go balls out and I really, really, really wanted to be successful at it, and I devoted 150% of my potential to it, yeah, I could have been a lot more successful on Whatnot. I could have a much bigger YouTube channel if that's really what my goal was on YouTube. It's not my goal on YouTube. For Whatnot, yeah, it would make sense, but I would have to do things that aren't interesting to me, or that to me would be like acquiring, like I'd have to acquire collections. I'd have to be more aggressive on ordering stuff for FOC. There's a little bit more risk involved, but I could do the giveaways and all that kind of stuff then that other sellers can do to kind of build those followers. And by the way, I should say giveaways were a lot different back then than they are now. Like they did attract a lot more attention to your channel. You didn't have these things where like sellers were sitting there for like half an hour running the same giveaway, trying to get people to come in the room and follow and enter and all that stuff. Yeah, there we go. But yeah, it's one of those things where I think that, you need to be very careful. And if I was still in it, I'm sure I could do better. Like, I think I left Whatnot, even though I'm still technically on there, with like close to 700 followers. So I was kind of getting to that critical mass point, but I was just watching it. Like, I feel like I'm going to lose money for a while before I do this. Let's try something else. And that, leading to your question, is around the time that I did a couple of YouTube auctions, but then I started to hear a little bit from a couple sellers I know about Drip.
I am very happy though that you honestly answer that, because that's a point of contention that I have with a lot of the Whatnot sellers out there. I not even a fraction of the level of Whatnot sellers that are out there as far as the sales that they make and the amount of shows that they do. I do them every so often as a goof sometimes, and sometimes I do them as a sale. But the one thing I have recognized, yes, the platform is going through its growing pains. It is going through extensive growing pains. There are a lot of issues, but there's also a lot of benefits.
Sure.
But the one thing that I have noticed, determination and the perseverance helps succeed in that platform.
But to be clear, like, so I guess the point that I want to make there is, what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to become a comic book seller, all caps. I want it to be part of the hobby for me. I don't want to be a seller first. And if I was willing to do that, I would have had a much different presence on Whatnot. But then I was like, I'm thinking about it. It's like, well, first of all, who would I be then if I devoted that much time and money and effort into making myself that person? And what would that do to like my brand, essentially, me, who I am, as known as on YouTube? Like, would people view me the same way? And when I ran that through my mind, I was like, they wouldn't.
It's a balance. It's a weird crossroads you have to take.
Yeah,
very weird crossroads. But I do want to jump on this for just a second. I said I'm not going to be answering anything through the thing, but this is something that I want to, because we're on the topic right now. Do you feel that people with double Ds actually have an unfair advantage on Whatnot?
The word, the reason I'm talking answer. What's that?
And not the hairy kind of double Ds.
Oh, you don't know. Yeah, no, I think the word that kind of sticks me there is unfair. And the reason it does,
visually unfair.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to I'm trying to think about that whole statement. Like, it definitely is an advantage. In some ways, though, it can be a disadvantage. There are definitely people who will not go in that stream and click on that stream. And I know a few of them, and a few of those people I know are big spenders on comic books.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're losing part of their audience, but I almost certainly think that they're gaining a bigger audience. No pun intended. To watch them for that reason, right? It's on a stream where Jack DeMaio was on a stream I was on, and we kind of talked to him about it, and he kind of evaded the question a little bit, like, what about all these, kind of like low cut top streamers? And he's like, I have a daughter, and I hate that. And he's like, but what I will say about Whatnot is we sell adult comic books and we don't social censorship. He kind of talked about that for a while, which, by the way, I love that Whatnot allows you to show a comic book full, no censored whatever on it. I think that's great. So I was happy to hear about that.
As long as you put that little mature thing that's as a
now you got
a lot of people don't, which is a problem.
It is a problem, and as long as your thumbnail supposedly doesn't have anything in it. Although I've definitely been scrolling through and seen stuff. I mean, maybe those things get taken care of. But not to get too much back on Whatnot, but that's actually the biggest problem with Whatnot is they're not awake at the wheel. They're not like constantly looking at streams and going. There's a very clear, like, they're relying on people to report those streams. Unless they get reported, it seems like nothing happens. Anyways, but when it comes to that kind of stuff, yeah, I think there's an advantage. But like, appearance plays a role. Like, maybe certain people watch me because I look like a comic book guy. I'm wearing a nerdy shirt, I've got glasses, I've got a beard, I got comic book stuff behind me. So I think it's kind of like we're lying to ourselves if we say appearance doesn't play a part in some of this stuff. It's just going to bring in some extra stuff there, but it's a complicated issue. I'll tell you what, though, I personally cannot watch a streamer who's like clearly using that as a gimmick. I might look, I'll be honest. I might click into it and see for a second, but it's usually so distractingly annoying within about 5 seconds I click out. And it's just like, because you're kind of curious, right? You want to see what's going on a little bit.
Yeah. Well, that's the reason I did that whole thumbnail campaign. I don't know if you remember that thumbnail campaign I had on Whatnot, where I was just putting obscene photos as thumbnails, which they never blocked, by the way, which was interesting.
Yeah.
They never blocked those, by the way. And I would just basically put my blue face on the hottest chick I could find holding a comic book.
Right.
And I got over 1,000 followers just doing that.
It worked.
Interesting, right?
Yeah.
And I never sold one adult-rated book.
There you go.
Which makes it even funnier.
But so here's my I know you're interviewing me, but here's my question back to you. Since you got over to 1,000 followers doing that, do you think it translated into success on Whatnot? Or did people bail because they realized you weren't doing that kind of stuff?
No. If I persevered and I continued to do it on a consistent basis, I would have done well on it. I just don't have that kind of inventory to be able to do that with. Yeah. And I also went across a lot of obstacles through Whatnot where they made it less fun for me. Sure. They put in the copyright infringement clauses inside the music, which I would just sit there and listen to new wave music, and I would get people to come in and I just play whatever music I wanted and have a good time and just want to buy it. If not, whatever the case. It was almost like my channel.
Yeah.
Just buy some comics if you want, or hang out with me if you want. That's how when they took away that joy from me, it made it a little tough for me.
Sure.
But I still want to follow up because I got a couple things that are loose ends on there that I want to finish up on. And then that's it. But again, I digress. It's not about me. It's about you. But we were talking about the whole sex sells situation. That's why I brought it up, where I use that as an experiment. Actually, just using those thumbnails. And I proved the point by doing that.
Yeah, surprise, surprise. People like TNA.
Yeah, big surprise. So we're going into the big out of the big boy of the block when it comes to these live sale type of formats into something that is a little bit more obscure and a little bit different called Drip.
Yeah, kind of an uphill battle, really. Just convincing people to hop into a show there. I'm very lucky, very fortunate that I have followers that are willing to come, kind of follow me to whatever I try, and they're curious. I think in some cases, I dare say, because I'm trying it, they want to check it out, which is really cool. That's definitely a testament to, like, how much I feel like I've kind of invested in a relationship with people that view my content. That's great.
Well, that's the only reason I even gave it a shot, because you were promoting it. What the hell is this? Drip?
There we go.
It sounds like a porno to me. But
it's a terrible name. But I mean, then again, kind of so is Whatnot, if you really think about it. I can't hear people say Whatnot in like everyday speech now without thinking about the stupid app. But yeah, so I transitioned to Drip, and I think what really sold me on trying it is this simulcast feature they have, which is really cool. Where if you start a stream on Drip, you can simulcast that same stream to YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And in fact, you can do all three at the same time if you wanted to. Now, people can't bid on those platforms, which is ultimately one of the downfalls of how it works. But you can still say, hey, if you want to bid, come on over here. Here's my referral link. You get some credit. And, if you want to bid on something, you can come do it over there. And that seemed appealing to me because I was going to go back to just doing YouTube auctions. And the worst part of YouTube auctions, I'm still pretty lucky with this one compared to other people I've talked to, is trying to deal with payments on the stream or track down people afterwards. And my big thing about YouTube, by the way, is I don't like to be friends. What's that?
That's a beast in itself. Tracking down people, making sure that they pay you, making sure that they don't cancel payment.
Right. Well, so my big thing is I don't take friends and family payments unless, have I ever done it? Yes. And a couple situations with people that I really know and trust, and I know really know and trust me. And, maybe they wanted to add stuff on after the show or whatever. But I would invoice people. I invoice you for your stuff, which is, by the way, what you're supposed to do. Just to be honest. Because frankly, two reasons. I wanted people that came and bought from me to feel like their purchase was protected. Like
you also want to know what the hell you're buying.
Exactly. Because I could actually show them on their invoice and make sure that before they paid, that maybe I missed something. I mean, especially when you're one guy running an entire auction by yourself, it's very, there's a lot of moving pieces going on. The other thing is I wanted to make sure that I didn't get my PayPal account frozen. You see some people talk about that in the community, and they're not really saying why their stuff got frozen, but generally it's because they're taking friends and family payments, and they're not really supposed to be because they're doing it for goods and services. So that was a big part of it for me, and not wanting to deal with those headaches. The other thing that's really nice, and I like this about Whatnot is probably actually the best about this, is the way that it compiles and handles shipping. At least for me, because I actually name every damn book that I put on either Whatnot or Drip. It's a Marvel Team Up 54 and not Comic Book 14. I don't know how the hell people want to deal with that all the time.
Lot 7.
Yeah.
Like what the fuck is Lot 7?
It drives me nuts. And like if I do have like a, here's 4 Todd McFarlane covers or something like that, I might call it a Todd McFarlane lot, of course, but not list. But in the description, I probably listed out which book was which and why they were, what the key reasons were or whatever. I tried to offer all that. I tried to offer pictures for everything I put up. It's a lot of extra work, but I feel like, buyers deserve that. And that's one of the things that I liked about Drip is that, okay, I can not have to harass people for payment or see when they're going to pay me. Also, I do a lot of stuff late at night. So if I get your invoice sent out late at night and you're already in bed, then I got to wait till the morning before you pay, before I really bother packing up all your stuff. And, because sometimes people don't want to pay. And then you're like, well, I just packed up a bunch of stuff for no reason. And you wasted a bunch of supplies. And so I like to wait till payment comes through before I pack up people's stuff. But when you're doing it through Whatnot or Drip, at least you get, kind of a
confirmation,
a shipping manifest essentially, right? And their payment all goes through. I know their address. I can just print the label. But Drip has gone through some changes. So what's kind of taking me away from Drip again a little bit is, first of all, and I knew this was not going to last, the other big selling point for Drip when I signed up for it was that shipping was free for the buyer and for the seller.
How is that possible to sustain?
Well, obviously, it's not possible to sustain unless you somehow have crazy high margins. But like obviously Drip can't control the margins on what their sellers are setting, not really anyway. But the big thing for me looking at it is that Drip is primarily a TCG selling platform, a trading card game like Pokemon. That's what they're known for, and some Funko Pops is kind of probably their next big category. Comic books are kind of down the list, like past action figures and sports memorabilia and all this kind of stuff.
Well, technically, Whatnot is the same kind of concept too.
Right, comic books is not
one of
the
the
biggest
later.
category.
Yeah,
100%. So I think that shipping just cards most of the time. I think there's probably a little bit more wiggle room with shipping. It would have been a little bit cheaper than comic books, especially when you get to like priority shipping and shipping slabs and all that kind of stuff, right? But so I think that's kind of how they did it. But it had to have been a feature designed primarily to draw people into the platform, and it worked to a certain degree. And then, of course, they had to take that away, which I understand. But they also did it in a pretty ham-fisted way. Instead of being like, hey, in 60 days, we're going to take it away. It was kind of like, in a week, this is going away. And then that became like a very vague announcement. And then it was like, tomorrow it's going away. Their communication, and on one hand it's great, and on one hand it sucks. It's great because every month they do a monthly town hall on their Discord server where you can literally dial in and using your voice ask the people that run Drip a question, and they address concerns and stuff like that too. Now those answers sometimes are a little vague, or like there's a lot of anybody who's on Drip or is part of that might know this joke. It's the roadmap contains a lot of stuff that is vaguely coming down the pipeline. But they do offer that kind of access, which is something you never get on Whatnot, right? Like that's one of the complaints people have about Whatnot is like, what the hell's going on? It's kind of like an iron curtain that you don't really get a peek behind. At least Drip shares what their intentions are or where they're planning on going, but they got rid of the free shipping. Then they added in some extra fees. The fees were like 4%, I think, and then they went up to like 7%. And then I think now they're up to like 9%. And
which
now
it's not necessarily horrible compared to eBay.
No, it's not. But here's the big differentiator. So remember how I said shipping went from being free? Well, they actually still covered a big chunk of the shipping. So I think for the average buyer, I think you maxed out what you would pay at like $5, I think, for the average buyer. And then what would happen is, as a seller, you would have these extra, like when you printed your labels and I'm using this type of shipping container, and you input all that information, you'd end up adding up some shipping charges. Well, then Drip would cancel those out. They would zero out your balance of what you accrued. So let's say you sold $400 in a show, and you had $50 in shipping expenses. Well, then you're only taking home, what did I say, $400. You're only taking home $350, but then you'd get a credit back for the shipping on the following Monday, which is really nice. Plus, they also have instant payouts. As soon as your show's over, boom, you can pull your money out.
It's not like Whatnot, which holds your money until they receive it.
Yeah, it's only like that for your first show. Your first show, you got to wait till the following Monday, and they pay you out. And then after that, you instantly can pull your money out. And I know Whatnot, if you're a big enough seller, you can do instant payouts too, but you have to get to at least 1,000, I think, before you can do that, or maybe it's higher now.
I think it is 1,000.
So there's really a lot of like cool features that Drip had that checked a lot of boxes for me. The other thing is, I do a lot of this stuff, right? Like I do a lot of really cool streaming technology.
What the hell?
Over on OBS broadcasting software, and you can have like custom layouts and templates and all this kind of stuff. And my favorite thing about Drip, like the subtle cool feature, is most people, you watch Whatnot and you're watching Whatnot like this on your phone, and it's all like this. On Drip, you can go like that, and all of a sudden you have a full landscape style image. So you can have your comic center in the middle, you can have information on each side, and people get crazy with it. Like they have like your random prize wheel on one side, they have their camera on another side, they have the item in the middle, and they have like rolling totals going through. There's all kinds of things you can do. Like they're streaming anime in the bottom right or something. And so,
the graphic interface itself is a lot more friendly, like visually friendly.
I think it's cleaner for sure. So yeah, that's basically where I'm at with Drip, like there were so many positive things, and like I saw the community building, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm kind of the other thing is, this is worth noting. I would be not doing myself a favor if I didn't say this. There are sellers that I found out were coming to Drip, and I got kind of like, okay, a little leery about it, because when I was brought in, I had to do an interview. It wasn't just like send us your financial information, which is kind of what Whatnot was when I got into that. I got instantly approved for Whatnot. I never had to do an interview. I know some people did. But for every comic book seller that came into Drip, you had to go through an interview. They had to kind of like look into you a little bit, and they wanted ethical, high standards, like a certain caliber of seller. Towards the end of the time that I had there, I noticed that they were kind of letting a couple sellers that, maybe I didn't think were kind of fitting in that role. And then sure enough, when certain things came to light, people might be familiar with the Nick GQ, Epic Nation, and Kyle Willis kind of whole situation, everything that happened there. One of those people was involved on Drip, and they were barred from streaming on Drip. So I give them credit for that, because they did some stuff that I think is unethical, and they were willing to draw the line and say, you're not going to sell on Drip. Well, that person was back on Whatnot within, I think, a week. So I just want to point that out too. I think that's kind of worth pointing out, is that they did kind of seem to have a higher standard, which I was more wanting to be part of that community for those reasons, right? Like, all right, like that was kind of worth a lot to me. But at the end of the day, I think I have the most success on YouTube, and people enjoy the shows, and it's fun. I think I saw K-pop in there saying something nice about him earlier. Why not? Let's just keep that train rolling, and maybe get some other people that were successful on those platforms that have kind of experienced issues that passed that threshold for me for like, what is a good seller? Maybe get some of them involved in those shows as well. So I've had a few people kind of express interest in kind of maybe doing like a block party kind of auction every couple of weeks or something. So probably start doing that.
So this is where you see your selling platform being in the future, at least in the near future,
Yeah.
unless something else better comes out down the line.
And honestly, probably for me, at this point, eBay is probably still where I still sell the most stuff. Like, if something comes hot on one of those lists and I have it, I probably am listing it there now.
See, I used to use eBay. I mean, those fees just like sticky you in the gut just a little bit more than everybody else.
Sure, but I mean, then again, like I said, I do invoices.
Really justifiable.
Yeah, but I do invoices for PayPal. I don't do the friends and family thing. So there's still a percentage there that comes off. It's not as high as eBay, but it's about half of that.
The friends and family is 3% that they are charging, correct?
The goods and services is
the goods and services.
Yeah,
and
it's about 8 or 9 on eBay usually.
Plus, there's a lot more though that's attached to eBay.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So it is less than half. It's more like a third, maybe.
Yeah.
But still, it's just one of those things where I feel like, depending on the book, it's worth it more often than not, because that's where the most eyeballs are.
True. I also think it's a racket that they charge you a percentage of the shipping that you actually charge on eBay.
That is annoying.
I don't think it's even legal, to be quite honest with you. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know how legal that is to charge for a percentage of the shipping that you're not actually receiving.
Yeah,
something odd about that. And I have.
Well, I think the way they get around that is because if you're not doing free shipping, you're paying for the label. So the buyer pays for the label, and then you're using those funds to pay for your label, essentially, theoretically. I think that's how they can get around that, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, because if you don't use their services to create the label, you create the label and you take it to the post office and pay the postage.
Yeah.
So we'll get that. That's a subject for another day. As far as how many illegal acts that I believe are happening in front of our eyes, and nobody's saying anything about them.
Right.
Because I really believe that there's something very off and very odd about that whole dynamic, and it could be a class action down the line. I would for sure. I would not be surprised at that. So we talked a lot about your selling right now. Where's the future of your channel going?
So yeah, that's been the thing is, I still want to do the top 5 not to buy. I want to do the price look backs on that for as long as people find that interesting. But when it comes to like kind of the other third leg of my content, I've kind of been filling it in. You know, a lot of people know I went through some stuff during the winter time. I had some family problems. I had some mental health problems myself. You know, problems. I just had some battles I had to fight.
Like
And
normal human beings.
yeah. Well, and you know, I had serious medical and personal issues going on with different members of my immediate family, and needed to take a step back. So honestly, really kind of derailed things for a couple months as far as even mental health. Like there's a component of like getting on and making videos and having them come out and talking to people afterwards it's part of my routine now. So when that doesn't happen, it shakes things up, right? Like I don't feel as connected to people. I don't feel like I'm talking as much with others and being social, which most of my social interaction is online. So when that kind of died down, I came back and I was like, okay, well, I got to start rolling in with these, weekly videos I do. I got to get those back up and running first. But now I kind of want this other, the third column, this third leg of content. And more I'm going to try to move towards talking about this kind of either retrospective kind of angle on comic books, or looking at storylines I've liked, or some collecting content, like collecting strategy kind of stuff, like those questions we should ask ourselves as collectors, a little bit of that too. But I really want to get into kind of the higher production value. One of the videos I want to do, I want to talk about the Age of Apocalypse and kind of looking back at that. I want to talk, I'm a big X-Men fan. I want to talk about the Age of Krakoa that we're seeing right now, and kind of, now that we've gotten pretty far into it, like what that looks like and what it's been like. Maybe talk about the history of the G.I. Joe comic book. And of course, my favorite thing, the thing that really jazzes me up, is doing creator interviews. That could be content creators, and it could be comic book creators. Doing those kinds of interviews, I absolutely love it. I know you're probably getting a taste of that doing this series for sure, with some of the people you've talked to, but it's fascinating, kind of having that interaction and having people involved in the chat and everything.
Well, I'm going to commend you on your latest interview that you did with Comic Tropes,
Thank
which
you.
was a fantastic interview. And for the people that don't know about who Chris from Comic Tropes is, you should definitely go check out that interview. He is, we have a tendency of talking about larger channels here on YouTube. We're all piss ants compared to some of these other channels. And even he's not one of the large channels. He's got a couple 100,000. And you might say, wow, he's a pissant compared to the few million subs that other channels have.
But just to put that in perspective, like, for example, I'll give you a free plug here. I know your next guest is going to be Gem Mint Collectibles, right?
Correct.
I haven't looked at his channel in a while, but I believe last time I looked, I think he was like 150,000 subscribers.
Somewhere in that range, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and so people think often of like who the biggest comic book channel is. And it's funny to hear him say people like Gem Mint, who that is nothing to sneeze at, of course. That is a ton of people watching.
It's quite an accomplishment.
It's a massive accomplishment. But then you got something like Comic Tropes, who's at 50,000 more than that. And it's crazy the amount of people I talk to. And I'm like, yeah, I'm having Chris from Comic Tropes on. Who? What is that? Because in our niche, it's just not as big of a deal.
And he's an amazing content creator.
Yeah.
He does great videos. He also is, an artist, a writer.
Yeah.
He's quite a talent, and it's odd that our little niche community actually doesn't know of people like this.
Yeah, or channels like with millions of subscribers.
No, I'm happy that you brought in somebody like that into our community and made people more familiar with them. And that's one of the reasons I do this interview series as well, to bring people closer together and actually make people familiar with each other.
Yeah,
that person that is within a 50 channel community of people they know in the channel community, where everybody's ranging from, I don't know, 50 subs to 500 subs. For some reason, they have that little bubble and they don't see everything on the outside, which is really great content, and they should experience that. So I'm really happy that you did that interview, and I strongly advise everybody that hasn't seen that, go check it out. Go take a look at Bronze's channel and check out the Comic Tropes interview, because it is the kind of content I personally want to see more of. I really do. I also like Kyle Willis interview that you did as well.
That was a very popular one. I interviewed Randy Emberlin. If you want to go see me talk to a creator, also Trish Forstner was on the show. So a couple comic book creators, and I would love to talk to more of those people. I think they do stuff that we all love and care about, and I think it's always interesting to hear behind the scenes and what happened, and get people in chat a chance to answer those questions.
You kind of stole my thunder with Comic Tropes. I was really like in the process of wanting to bring him on, and I'm like, God, this fucking guy, he got him first. Now what do I got? I got to wait a few months until I bring him on, so it doesn't feel like I'm like piggybacking you. But
well, you know what? You can talk to all the small channels like that Bronze Age Nerd guy and interview those guys, and I'll take the high rollers.
All right, it sounds like a plan. Sounds like a plan to me. No, but excellent stuff, by the way.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
And it sounds like you're actually taking a page out of his book and Comic Explains book, and as far as the kind of content you want to start creating, like what you were talking about Krakoa, right, and talking about the G.I. Joe series and a few things, because that's kind of what they do. That's what their thing is, and there's a lot of high production that is involved in that.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a natural extension of where I've come to. Like, so, I know a lot of people that make videos on YouTube. Editing is a hurdle for them, and they don't want to do that, or they don't feel like they can do that. And I taught myself editing. My first video was very poorly edited, and so I've been teaching myself that all along. And I feel like I've gotten to a point where I'm not by any means a master at it, but I've done some, like, if you watch my videos, one of the things I always try to do is make something different or better in every single video I do. And editing tricks and, like, talking like, taking other personas and making them my own, and coming out here and, I just like to rub my hands about it sometimes, and just, the level of which, that kind of stuff comes in, it really kind of lends itself to that. And then plus the other thing that I've heard over and over and over again as a content creator is that people love hearing my voice. And if I can talk on a video and do a voiceover and talk about something like the history of G.I. Joe and, really kind of get into it and kind of take that in another direction, I think I kind of have, like, two skill sets that people really seem to respond to, that I can turn into something that might be more engaging for certain segments. It's probably going to be a slow growth pattern for me, because anytime a channel that's established that has a very specific type of content starts to make a different type of content, it usually does have kind of a growth curve to it that isn't very friendly. But that's nothing I'm not a stranger to that. So it'll be kind of fun trying to tackle that.
Well, it comes down to the actual effort and the work that you put into the production, because I don't think it's hard to edit a video. You have to put the work in, though.
It's very time consuming.
That's the thing. It's tedious. Yeah. It's not like rocket science where you have to basically go through a process of going through universities in order to learn the process. You can self-teach yourself, but you have to put the time in, and you have to put the effort in. And you definitely do that as far as your channel is concerned. Everything from the sound quality to the video quality to the little blue lights that you have in the background, and everything that is a component of your videos has thought and time that goes into it in order to make it work the way it works. A lot of people will try that visual effect that you're doing right now, where you have the fluorescent or the blue lights in the background, but they'll look blue too.
Yeah,
you know how to work with the lighting, and that's something that is done through time, and you learn
for sure.
So you are benefiting from the work that you're putting in there, and clearly the growth rate of your channel is benefiting that as well. You went from basic obscurity a few years ago, right?
100%.
Who the hell is this guy? Who's Bronze Age Nerd, right?
Oh yeah.
To all of a sudden, hey, just a hey guy.
Yeah, it's been interesting for sure. Like that whole development and growth over time. Like, in so many ways, I still feel back like when I had 200 subscribers, and I, by the way, was amazed I had 200 subscribers. it was just blew me away. And then not like getting close to 1,000, be like, what do I guess I better run a giveaway because that's what people do, like all that kind of stuff, right? Like, and then now it's just kind of like, all right, well, another milestone down, cool. Let's see, if we can keep this thing going, because that's how I measure. Not really like my own personal success, but just whether or not I'm doing stuff people want to watch, which is, again, that's a huge goal of mine. So it's been very flattering to see that.
And what's your target right now? What's your big next milestone? Is it 5, 10,000, 100,000? What? There has to be some type of mental milestone in your mind where you feel, you know what? I did something, because 1,000 is always that first barrier that everyone wants to hit. They always want to hit that, whether it's for monetization or whether it's for just the gratification of saying,
Yeah.
I got to 1,000 subs. Everybody wants to reach that 1,000 for different reasons or not.
Right.
But after you pass that, it kind of gets a little bit boring. 2, 3, 4,000. It's nice. You're loving the fact that you're growing. But there's always like a number in everybody's head that you're like, I made it. I'm legitimately a staple in the community with this. So what's that number for you?
I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I don't have one. For me, I did have 1,000 because it's a nice, juicy, round number. That was a goal of mine. And of course, like, as you get close to 5,000, as you get close to 10,000, 20,000, like those numbers, it's not like I'm going to be like completely unaware that that's happening. You're unfortunately, for better or worse, you're greeted with it as soon as you log into your YouTube dashboard, the studio. It's like the big bold number you see right away. But I don't like, I never, ever, ever did this, never started this to become a big channel. I started this for my own reasons, and it, almost paradoxically, I do keep track of that stuff because, again, what I care more about is the rate at which I'm gaining subscribers, views, followers. I kind of take it all into kind of consideration. It's not just one number I look at. And the reason why is because if I see that start to slow down, I go, I'm losing people here, or I'm not at a consistent rate. Is this kind of a natural plateau? Is there something I've been doing recently that is worse, that people aren't enjoying as much? Is there like an audience I'm not serving? Am I not doing a good enough job with my thumbnails? Whatever it is. And again, self growth and improvement is a huge thing for me. If I'm not doing it, then I'm like a shark that's not swimming in water. I don't care where it goes to. I think if I had one thing that I would point to, maybe the silver play button. Maybe, I don't know. Like, I don't really think I'd care once I had it, but that's kind of like, to me, it was like 1,000 was a thing, all right, cool. Well, now I have all, because you get some extra features there too, right?
Yeah. But now you get a trinket if you get the silver blade, right?
Yeah.
You get something that's shiny to show off to everybody. That's everybody wants that shiny thing, right?
But then it's funny. I was thinking about it's like, if I had it, I would probably just bury it in the back somewhere. Like, I wouldn't have it like, like right over my shoulder. Like, it would just be something that would just be back there. But I think, like, as far as a tangible, because if I compare myself to other content creators and I say, like, like somebody like a Comic Tropes or a Gem Mint or something like that, or a Comic Tom, or even more reasonable channels at like 10,000 subscribers or whatever that I could attain relatively quickly. So what? Then I'm there. Then what's the point? Like, the point to me should be the content I'm creating and whether or not I'm happy with it and whether or not the people watching are happy with it. Something I've been a big supporter of for the entire history of my channel is that I don't do the like and subscribe thing. And my deal with that is because I don't get influenced by that myself when I'm watching videos. So it's kind of just waste. It's annoying. And at worst, it's annoying. At best, it's a waste of time. So if I'm not doing that, then people are following because they want to follow, because they want to watch, because they want to click subscribe, because they wanted to hit like.
As usual, you're being over the top modest. There's got to be a number in your head. Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm not too shy to tell you my goal. I hit my 1,000. Yay for me! I hit 1,000. I don't want 1,000. You know what I want? I want a gazillion.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that's
you can't
what
go wrong with a gazillion.
I'm only about a gazillion away.
Yeah, more or less, give or take.
Yeah, I'm only about a gazillion away. But oh my god, when I get there, I will rule the YouTube world. But all joking aside, there's a lot of misnomers as far as the YouTube community, as far as becoming stinking rich from being a YouTuber.
Yeah.
You want to shed it? You want to share some knowledge on those misnomers as far as becoming YouTube famous and
Sure.
gazillions?
Sure. So unless you're regularly logging 100,000 views a video, and that's like your low point, you're not going to be doing this. And I've said I'm a stay-at-home dad. That's for various reasons that are complicated, but it's not going to be quit your day job money for most people. So that's one thing for sure. And I've shared a couple times approximately what I make just from the YouTube ad revenue essentially, and from my channel members, which I definitely appreciate that. It makes a big difference. But I like to point out how kind of in the grand scheme of things, if you think about the hours I put into making this stuff, it's kind of comical. Like it maybe, depending on how you look at it, pays for itself, but not really. Not like if you value your time, like for what I was being paid professionally before, no, it definitely doesn't pay anywhere near that. So that's one huge misconception. I think people are kind of wising up to that. But the other thing too is that's not your only revenue stream. You could make the argument that without the presence of my channel, like I wouldn't get as many sales in comic books as I do when I sell them. So you got to factor that in. Kind of hard to say how much to factor that in, but I think it's a factor. There's also sponsorships that come into play. That's something that a lot of people don't talk about, and I'm very transparent whenever I have a sponsorship. For one thing, you're supposed to disclose that with YouTube. Unlike some channels that are sponsored by Snapple that never ever disclose it in their videos, but whatever.
I don't know anything about that.
We all know you got big Snapple money.
Anything about that? Well, there's a reason why I've gone to the Neutral Cup. I've come to blows with Starbucks.
I see.
And guess what, Starbucks? No more advertising.
There you go. Unfortunately, I have and love several of their like.
No. Don't show them. Don't show the mermaid. No, there you go.
There you go. But I actually am not a Starbucks customer unless I'm in the middle of nowhere and I have nowhere else to buy coffee. That's about the only time I'll buy Starbucks. I just don't appreciate the coffee that much. So yeah, well, clearly Kool-Aid. He just wants people to drink the Kool-Aid. That's the secret. But yeah, so the sponsorships are a big deal, and I'm very careful to disclose that whenever I talk about those kinds of things or product that's sent to me, that kind of stuff. I vet those things very carefully before I usually take them on. Like there's been a couple people that approached me, and it ended up not working out. Like I didn't do it, but like I had a clothing company approach me and say, we want to sponsor your stuff.
Really? And that's interesting. What kind of clothing would they have sponsored for you? Like
I don't know really the best way to describe it. Kind of
beard bands or something like that?
No. It was very like, I would say kind of very interesting, like edgy kind of designs. Like they would take like the kind of art you see on like really cool art you might see on like DeviantArt or something like that, and they would make like a giant graphic on not like just one square image on the middle of the shirt, but like make a giant shirt out of it kind of. And they had a lot of like other like regular clothes too, but that was kind of like their marquee style of product. And I remember like thinking about that, like, I don't know how to approach this. I one thing I told them is that I need to see your products first. I need to make sure that these are quality clothes. So if you guys can send me some sample, and they offered to do that. And then we kind of got down that line because I'm like, okay, well, I definitely don't want to like be pushing like this line of clothes and then have people get it and it's just like Smuckers branded plaid shirts. I really don't want to like have somebody go buy this stuff and then like it falls apart the first time they wash it or something like that, right? So I wanted to kind of check that out. And then I actually, so on my Discord server at the time, it was very small. It's not very big now, but it was very, very small. And I kind of put on there like, hey, you guys are some of my most hardcore followers. If I started advertising this, would that be like a turnoff to you? Would you understand it? And I got like various, kind of opinions on that. And I took that into consideration. But those sponsorships are important. Like if you want to like make some money doing what you do, and which is it's never my first consideration. It's never my, like I went around asking people like, is this something I could or should do that would be okay with you? And
Well, I'll be quite honest with you, asking your audience could go a couple different ways as far as what, you could have some jealousy factors in place too, of people voting against it because they don't want you to make any money from any sponsors.
It's certainly possible. I think the specific type of follower I'm talking about, I'd be willing to say that 90% of them don't feel that way. That's to being honest. If I just ask my general broad audience, that could be a much more mixed reaction. This is a very focused part of my audience. Yeah. But yeah, and then recently a couple times I've approached a couple different sponsors too. One beard related sponsor. Those kind of conversations are ongoing, but I've had a few like comic shops or comic book related products, and I've always made very careful to ask around about those companies or those people, get a sample of the product or buy it myself and check it out. And make sure it's something I want to support, because I take that stuff very, very seriously, but it is a big component. And unfortunately, a lot of people just like take the check and run. I hate to say it, but it's true. And you can tell that because of like the kind of product it is. If you ever buy it or something, like no one checked this out and said this is a good idea. Or the reputation that product has, for example, that can be a big part of it. So that's a big part of it too, that I think people kind of leave out or don't think about, is the sponsorships.
Who would be your dream sponsor? Like if you were able to land them as a sponsor, it would bring you all the joy in the world.
That's a really good question. I mean, it would never happen, but kind of Marvel Comics. Kind of Marvel Comics. I mean, that's by far my favorite brand, but they don't, they're not going to do that. They're not going to sponsor a comic book channel. But if they did, that'd be kind of cool.
How do you know? How do you know Marvel
right?
won't start sponsoring channels?
That's true. That's true.
That could always happen in the future. So Marvel.
I guess that would be my pie in the sky.
You got this Amish-looking guy over here that likes comics, and he likes Marvel comics, and he'd take them out of his beard. He'd pull coupons out of his beard. They do everything, whatever it takes to be a Marvel comic supporter. So, if you're watching you never know, some weird Marvel corporate bigwig might run across his channel by accident, and you never know what happens.
Well, I mean,
even though you're wearing a Green Lantern shirt, but yeah, that being said, you never know.
Who's to say I don't have inroads at Marvel already? I don't know if you remember, but I did break a Marvel story at one point in my YouTube career.
Well, you do have some connections, so
yeah.
I'm not doubting it. So there you go, Marvel. That's a great aspiration to have. And I really say this, you never know. They might have they might have an app that they're promoting.
Yeah,
they might have this that they're promoting. It might not be Marvel Comics like as a corporation that they'll be sponsoring channels with, but it might be some component of them that they'll be sponsoring. So why not? Why not?
Here's the question I would actually like chat. Go ahead and chime in on this. If you could see me having a sponsor that you would think is either not offensive or is fun, or it'd be cool because they offer a discount code or whatever reason it might be, for whatever reason, what kind of sponsor do you think would be perfect for my channel? I'd be curious to see what people have to say about that.
That's actually a perfect transition for us to get into our Q&A segment of the chat.
I can't wait.
Any questions?
Don't answer no questions, and I won't tell you no lies. Hey Lord, don't ask me questions. Hey Lord, don't ask me questions, please.
What do you want from us? To ask you this much is just a matter of trust, not an affront. What do you want?
There you go. What do you want, people? First of all, answer Braun's question, because that's actually a great question. Who would you like Braun's to have as a sponsor? Who would be your ideal sponsor for the Bronze Age Nerds channel? And I have to think about it a little bit as far as who I'd want to be sponsoring you, because you could go a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that you were contemplating being a gun show as well as a comic show in the beginning.
Well, not as well as. I mean, that would have been in place of it.
In place of it,
Yeah.
I would actually have thought of combining the two and going hunting with a gun for comics. You know, that would have been an interesting. Hold people up for their comics with a big shotgun. You know, the comic hunter.
Nothing like that. The thing that I thought might be funny, I did have this thought, is to take the worst comic book I read that week or month or whatever and put a hole
Blow it
through
up.
But I'm actually one of those people. I destroyed a comic print on my channel for a live chat thing, some hijinks and shenanigans once, and that almost physically pained me.
And I'm sure you got a lot of backlash on that. People freaking go nuts if you
People
destroy
loved
a
it.
comic.
People
Really?
loved it.
Really, I've seen the opposite. People flip out.
A couple people did, but yeah, that was interesting. But it was a Thanos print. I kind of turned it into like a snap kind of thing, because I tore it in half. And man, it really it sucked. I don't like destroying it. I'd rather give it away to somebody that wants it.
I feel the same way. I feel
The big gun show.
Hey,
Yeah,
there's
somebody
something
don't
to
see
that. Could you imagine some nut running around with a shotgun hunting for comics?
Well,
I mean, think about it. That's a gimmick in its own. I mean,
it's a gimmick for sure. It's certainly a style, but it is definitely not my style. It's kind of the opposite of kind of the
You're
gun
kind of
owner that I am.
anti-gimmick, though. You're not
Yeah.
really a gimmicky guy. You're more of a straight, a straight man show.
I don't know. You say that, and you're talking about a guy who has a booty cover of the week. So I don't know. I'm not opposed to a gimmick.
The booty cover is kind of you, though. That you enjoy
That's what
that.
I'm saying.
It's part of you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not like you're creating the booty show.
And shout out to the Copper Age Babe. It was actually her that was like, "Yeah, you should do that. You should definitely go forward with that." Instead of it's kind of this seems like a dumb idea. And she's like, "No, do it. It's you."
Where is the Copper Age Babe, by the way? Why is she not supporting your interview on this channel?
So the Copper Age Babe worked very hard for our family and had I would say about a 14-hour day, and came home near the beginning of this interview and is probably I know she's upstairs. She's upstairs relaxing right now, and I don't blame her.
I don't blame her either. I don't blame her. When I was married, my wife, she didn't want to have anything to do with this bullshit. She's like, leave me alone, So
I am not from Seattle. You keep saying that. I'm not from Seattle, man.
You want to correct everybody where you're from?
I'm from Southwest Washington. That's about as close as I like to get it.
The land of no LCSs.
Well, technically one LCS that I have a very notorious interaction with.
Do you want to get into that?
If
I
you
know
want
that-
to, I mean,
I know you talk to death about it, but I'm sure there's one or two people in the chat that never heard that story. And
if they
you know
have a
what?
question about it, I'm more than happy to answer. Let's put it that way.
That's true. Hold on.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah,
she
she did.
She's a badass. So
I just, you know what? I am very, very split between how I feel about LCSs.
mhm.
We have an ever dwindling number of LCSs in this country, coast to coast. And a lot of people like to throw it on the economy, on the market, on a lot of different things, which do play a factor. But I personally believe the biggest problem that you have with LCSs is the sellers and the owners that don't know how to run a business.
There are way too many LCSs that are run by people that just said someday it would be cool to run an LCS.
And they have no understanding of how to run a business and how to interact with people and actually to improve and grow. That's another big problem. You have a lot of LCSs that have been around for 30, 40 years, and that the only reason they sustain is because they're only show in town.
Yep.
And once they're gone, what happens?
Well, and people, you know, I definitely don't want it to seem like I'm painting LCSs in some kind of like, you know, bad light here, because I think again, it's an LCS itself is almost like a neutral thing. It's how that LCS is run. But that's in that LCS, it's the only shop in town. Well, guess where everybody who wants to sell comic books, you know, that they've inherited or that they've had sitting in an attic for 30 years or whatever, guess where they go? They go to that LCS. And again, I am not saying that they shouldn't buy those at like a discounted wholesale type of price. I think generally speaking, they should. But they get it. Usually, most LCSs get a nice steady flow of comic books from that. That's kind of the not so secret about how LCSs stay afloat. They don't just buy new books every week.
They wouldn't survive off the new books.
And by the way, I say that fully understanding that like there's a lot of risk involved with that. There's a lot of work involved with that. There's a lot of pricing. There's a lot of cleaning and organizing and rebagging and boarding and, you know, negotiating to make sure you don't pay too much for the click. I get it. I'm not saying that in a bad way, but I'm just saying like, you know, they kind of get like that lifeline a lot of times that most comic book businesses don't. Like any online shop, they're generally not buying collections. A few do, but it's an important factor to consider. So.
Absolutely. And by the way, anybody that wants to put a question, if you don't mind putting a Q the way K-pop just put it in front of our question so I don't miss it, it would help us out a lot because I might miss it.
Yeah.
Have you ever gone back to the store that wouldn't allow phones?
So I have not. The other question I get a lot is, will I name that shop? And I haven't for a few reasons. One is I like to be a little loosey-goosey with where I live, like geographically. And that definitely would pin it down pretty close. The other is that I don't think it's right for me to do that because I've learned, I have spoken negatively about a comic shop, a large comic shop before, very publicly. And
which, by the way, is one of my favorite segments that you've had in the
great.
Not because of the controversy,
yeah,
but I just like the back and forth. I like what you did, and then I like the reaction video, and I like the back and forth.
That's good. But I learned a lesson from that, which because you know, that's actually there's two videos. One is the phone I got the shop I got kicked out of for using my phone, or I mean I say kicked out because it's an easy way to say it. What it was is, you know, hey, I don't want you to use your phone in my shop anymore. After me barely using my phone in their shop, by the way. But that was my childhood LCS, a shop that I had been going to on and off, but mostly on for literally 30 years. But originally it was his father's shop. It was mostly a card shop. And then it was kind of a card and comic shop. For the vast majority of that time, he always worked there. He worked there even when he was a kid. But he was the primary guy I dealt with for most of that time. His father retired. And I have a very long relationship with this guy. And I think he has maybe sort of a mood disorder kind of a thing, because he can be, you could walk in the shop and he could be sunshine and rainbows and happy to see you. We can have a cool conversation, and then a lot of times it's neutral and it's him complaining about other customers, which just, anytime a shop owner does that. I worked retail for a very long time. I worked retail management, store management, general management for a very long time, retail and customer service. And I can tell you, if you're doing that, people are wondering, what's he going to say about me when I leave to other customers? So that's kind of one thing. And then the other thing is he would also used to be cantankerous sometimes with me. Or like, oh, I got to go pull your books. And it's like, yeah, my pulls that I do that help you stay in business, like, I mean, isn't that what?
Oh my God, you have to do your job.
Right. And, there was always a lot of like, I'd ask for something, it wouldn't be there. I really don't think, because I was not this kind of collector for most of my life. It wasn't because like he pulled the hot book kind of a thing, which may have been a problem with another certain shop I talked about. But it was more of like, just, he never ordered it, or it never came in, or, but there was never like a clear like line of dialogue, like, hey, that book didn't come in. I'd be like, hey, where's this Excalibur issue or whatever? Oh, I don't know. Cool. I guess I need to go drive to another shop or order it online now and fill my run that I'm reading or whatever it is.
Magic. It disappeared.
Yeah. So, and I can't, I wish I had pictures of the inside of the shop to show people, because it's a bunch of long boxes in the middle of the store. And over about half those comic book boxes are sheets of like broken down cardboard boxes. And on top of those boxes are things like orders that he's packing up, or people's pull orders, or new comic book day books. And you basically can't get to half the long boxes. There's like a freaking cardboard character cutout standee. There's baseball card boxes. There's just shipping supplies, random stuff. And so, I'd always feel bad. I'd be like, hey man, can I move this, or can you help me move this? I actually want to look at the S's. I want to look at, the G's for G.I. Joe or whatever. Oh yeah, I guess he's one of those kind of guys. And that's exactly what you're talking about when you're talking about comic book shops. And it's these people that just frankly shouldn't be running a retail environment. And they wonder why people don't like them or they don't go there.
And now, do you think a shop like that is dying out because the economy, or because of market condition, or because they're just terrible business people?
With where that shop is at, I think you can make, if I had run that shop, I think that shop would be kick ass and could make a killing. I really do. Because that town is a hub town for a bunch of communities around it that a bunch of people go to do their shopping. There's nothing else like it. There used to be 2 other comic book shops. They both closed down over time. One for health reasons. I don't know why the first one closed down. I was a very young child when it closed down. And yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, I definitely think it could have been successful. I also realized, I'm sorry, K-pop, I need to get to another part of the answer to your question, which is I may go back someday, but if I go back, it would literally be to try to ask the owner like how he feels about that decision and how it went. And since that's the reason I want to go back rather than to give him any business, I feel weird doing it, because I don't want it to be like a gotcha moment, but I'd want to have it on camera and I'd want to say like, hey, I want to talk to you about this. Are you willing to sit down and talk about it? I have a 99% feeling that he'd say no, but I think that would be interesting because maybe there's a perspective about it I don't understand, and I wanted to get that perspective. That's the only reason I'd go back.
Understood. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kyle, I'm going to ask you if you could please rewrite your question, because there's no way I'm going to be able to go back all the way up to find your question.
I believe there was math involved in that question.
I don't know what the question was, but I don't want to ignore it. But at the same time, there's like been a million comments since then. What's your favorite mutant? Well, mutant villain.
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, the short list for me, so she's not anymore, but I used to love White Queen. I always think telepaths, I think there's too many of them, but to me, it's like the ultimate player on the chessboard of like any kind of battle situation is because you have a telepathy, they can control minds. And of course, writers have created different reasons why they can't, for certain characters. Yeah. But White Queen is fantastic. But then I love like a good brawler like Juggernaut. I think he's a great, like just fun character to like throw down and fight with. But like favorite, Magneto's a pretty cliche answer. I actually think it might be Apocalypse.
Really?
Because I'm a big believer in and the X-Men are great for this, by the way, but out of them, the best villains are the ones that have, like, from their perspective, you can understand why they do what they do. And Apocalypse comes in, he's this old character. He has this, belief in this mindset that he's wanting to impose upon the world because he believes it's the right way to do it. The survival of the fittest trope. And I think it's either him or Sinister, and Sinister is very closely related to Apocalypse, or at least that's how it's been intertwined over time through retcons and stuff like that, world building. Sinister, I really like where he's at these days. So currently it's Sinister, old school. I think the X Factor run is highly underrated when it comes to the X stuff. I think the Simonsons did a great job on that. I'd probably say old school Apocalypse, currently Sinister and what's going on with him, even though he's on the council of Krakoa and everything.
Well, you don't feel that he's way too overpowered?
Apocalypse or Sinister?
Apocalypse.
Just based on well, it's like any good villain that's going to take on a team, like any good Avengers villain, any good X-Men villain. They're going to take on a whole team. They have to be pretty tough, to take on an entire team. And I think the X Factor team did a really good job fighting him over the years in those stories. And if the X Factor, which essentially was the original X-Men, if they could take him down or defeat him, Cyclops defeated him a couple times. One of the reasons that I thought Cyclops was a badass, by the way, is because he was instrumental in defeating Apocalypse. Then I think that kind of compensates for that. And just straight up will say that Age of Apocalypse is one of my favorite storylines ever, because that's like you get to see what happens if Apocalypse got his way, right? And that was such a badass experiment.
And it's always interesting to see like the heroes go on an uphill battle, so it makes sense,
Yeah.
But Apocalypse has become more and more powerful over years,
Right.
until they depowered him in recent history.
Yeah, he like any X-Men history, most comic books history, especially for long-running Marvel series, but especially for X-Men, things just become convoluted, because then you got a future version of Apocalypse and present version of Apocalypse, and then there was the 12 and the whole depowering thing. I don't know. It's just interesting, but yeah.
X-Men is complicated. Let's leave it at that.
Unfortunately,
at least these days, it's complicated.
Yeah.
But that's a video for another time. You could dive into that freaking black hole of a story. I'm kind of like I'm waiting to hear somebody like you or Comic Explain to tell me about it. I'm done reading it. So who is number one best artist in your opinion?
There's a great list, and I won't bother everybody going through it. They've probably heard it before. For me, just from a technical perspective, it's almost like it's not even fair anymore. Jim Lee is I think the best artist, and probably, depending on the day, my favorite comic book artist for me is a lot like asking me what my favorite movie is or my favorite band. It really depends on the day. It depends on the style I'm in for, because while Jim Lee is amazing, it's almost like he's so good in some ways it gets a little boring now. I don't really want to say that, but it just looks so clean every time, right? And I like that highly detailed, highly stylized style. So I'm drawn to artists like that quite a bit.
Plus you're a 90s collector.
Yeah. And 90s X-Men especially. But I think part of the reason I almost say that too is because his DC work, it's mostly covers now, almost entirely covers now, and it's the same characters. Like Jim Lee Batman is freaking amazing, but how many different ways are you going to see it? So I kind of wish you'd go back and do Marvel work. It's something I've mentioned before. I would love to see that, or even an independent title and do some interiors and stuff like that. But there's so many. I mean, I love Adam Hughes. I love J. Scott Campbell for their kind of cake artist kind of style. So many.
It's a hard question to answer because there's different aspects to everybody's art. Are you talking about pencilers? Are you talking about painters? Are you talking about
Sienkiewicz, man? I mean, like, this guy's freaking incredible.
Yeah. And
but the other thing I would say though, here's the dark horse pick, literally, and that would be Adam Warren. Does an incredible manga inspired style in a book called Empowered. He also did some Gen 13 and some other stuff, of course. Check out his work in Empowered, especially if you like kind of funny manga, Far East inspired kind of books. His work in that is incredible. It blows me away.
That's definitely a dark horse. You basically that's not a name that you hear thrown around very often. I am knowledgeable of him, and he actually is a very clean artist as well.
Yeah.
So good answer. Very good answer. And on top of it, you gave the Bookworm a hard on as well as Otaku for naming Jim Lee, because they're the biggest Jim Lee groupies you could possibly ever imagine.
I love him.
So let's see what Kyle has to ask us. If a train is leaving Puyallup, what the hell is a Puyallup?
Puyallup.
Puyallup, okay. Puyallup
Puyallup, Washington.
Okay. At 77. See, I don't know Puyallup, Washington.
Most people don't.
You know, I'm from New York. I know New
It's
York.
It's the home of Washington State Summer Con, and it's where the fairgrounds are at in Washington.
Okay. At 75, you see, you're a knowledgeable Washington man. 77 miles per hour, and a plane was leaving a SeaTac at 335 miles per hour, 333 miles per hour. I hate you, Kyle. What the hell are you doing to me? Heading the same destination. Who would be the better lay, Mary Jane or Gwen Stacy? It's clone. Not Gwen Stacy. Gwen Stacy's clone.
Yeah, it's interesting he went with clone on this one instead of just Gwen Stacy. I would. But so here's my theory on this. It depends on what for the individual. It depends on what they're into. Are you into somebody who's just smoking hot and that's going to be all you need, or are you into somebody who is going to be a considerate lover? Because I have a feeling. General logic's going to apply here. Mary Jane probably hasn't had to work very hard for her romantic conquests. So I'm going to guess, and this is an assumption, that Gwen Stacy's clone is going to be the quote unquote for Kyle better lay.
Really?
I think so.
I think you're against the redheads.
No, not at all. Not at all. I think Mary Jane would be like on paper is hotter, but you know, is that the only factor for better lay?
Yeah, but you know what? I'm sensing a little bit of bias towards the blondes. You kind of want Emma Frost over Jean Grey.
Good point. Right. No, I'm more of a brunette guy, actually. So Baroness would be my answer over all of them, for example.
Well, Baroness got that evil hot look, you know.
Yeah. The glasses and the the kind of like cat eye makeup and all. Yeah, I like that. So,
good question, Kyle. Thank you.
Yeah, very tough.
More condensed next time. Not so much reading, but good question. And
I like the misdirection.
And I also like to hear about towns I've heard of in my life before. That helps me as well.
Learn some geography while you're at it.
There you go. Toby, I'm happy that you're. Oh, look at this! Look at this! What the hell's going on now?
He'll get there eventually. I was hoping he'd have a cigarette in his hand when I did that.
Yeah. No. Anyway, I'm glad that you're enjoying my cigarettes.
I'm glad you're enjoying your cigarettes, and I'm glad I don't have to.
I appreciate it. Warren did great stuff on Star Wars Gen 13 and Dirty Pair. Actually, that's where I do remember him from the Dirty Pair.
For sure. So for me, Empowered is the best stuff. Gen 13 stuff. I was such a big fan of different styles of Gen 13. It's hard for me to. Although at Star Wars, I actually need to see what he did on Star Wars. I actually don't remember that, so I need to check that out. Thanks for the knowledge, K-pop.
So it looks like we kind of went through all the questions. Kyle, he's asking about some poetry he wrote for you. Did you get his special poetry package?
Well, I've seen his poetry, but it looks for you up there. I'm guessing that was earlier in the conversation. So I'm sorry. I did not see what you wrote for me earlier today, Kyle. I've been focusing on the interview, so I apologize about that. I know Agu asked, Agu, let's say 360. 360 is the answer to your question, Agu. That's as far as I want to go into that one.
And I think when I was a little boy, we were allowed to in bars with our dads. Very relevant to conversation. Thank you, Toby.
Very much so.
Yeah.
When I was a little boy, I was allowed to sit in the back of a Z28 Camaro with two chain smoking parents. So everything would, if you know a Z28 Camaro, it's like the hatchback style back. All the smoke, because no air conditioning, the windows would always be rolled down. All the smoke would roll into the back, and I would just, secondhand smoke, chain smoke all day long on long car rides. That's what I remember.
Bill's character. You're lucky you didn't learn how you didn't smoke from there. My father,
because of that.
Actually, that probably is the reason why I started smoking, because I thought it was like perfectly okay. So I guess kids have a different way of interpreting what's okay and what's not okay. I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, my dad's been smoking for years. What's the big deal? You know?
Right.
My
Yeah, I
mom
mean that for
tolerates
sure.
it.
I don't want to sound wrong. I think I'm a little younger, and I think I kind of hit maybe some more of the knowledge and campaigns that were in schools and stuff at the right time too.
That's very true. Everything has changed over the years. As far as I was able to, at 14, 15 years old, I was able to go to the candy store and pick up, even though 18 was the age, they
Yeah.
would all give me cigarettes without a problem. Almost like marijuana today.
Well, now I'll say this much for like, a lot of jobs I had. Like I ran a movie theater for a long time. And before that, I was a projectionist for a long time for movie theaters. And, there'd always be this point in the night where everybody would go out for a smoke. And because I was always around it as a kid, it didn't really bother me. Some people were like, ugh, I'm not going to go out there and smoke with those guys, or it's cold out there or whatever. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. I'm used to it being cold and rainy. It didn't bother me. I'd go out with them and hang out with them, and being around the smell in that kind of a setting, you're outside, it doesn't really bother me that much. And it's kind of like that whole thing where there's like almost like this counter movement to like people like taking smoke breaks. Like people, why do they get to go take so many smoke breaks and stuff like that? Why? Well, that was my smoke break. I'd go out with them and talk, and usually have a fun conversation and come back in. And I always hung out with the smokers, even though I never smoked. So
Plus, you kind of were immune to it since your parents were smoking for all those years, right?
yeah, I was pretty nose blind to it, especially when I lived with them. I was pretty nose blind to it, so it didn't really bother me in the same way.
It's funny. It really is funny how things change over the years, how we have a tendency of feeling what's correct and not correct, and what's acceptable and not acceptable. Not that smoking is acceptable at any time,
Right.
but it was looked down upon if you're a young kid smoking back then. But if you became a mature adult, it was sophisticated.
Yeah.
Weird.
Very weird.
Yeah, it is what it is. But I think we said a lot today, right?
Well, I have one question for you.
Sure. I might have an answer for you. Let's see. Let's hear this.
And I think I know what your answer is, but I feel like it needs to be said. So you've done this series, Influence the Influencer.
Yeah.
Very, very clever idea. I commend you on it. I think it's a cool series. I've been enjoying watching along for some of the interviews you've done. I haven't caught all of them, but I've caught most of them and watched most of them. So two-part question. Part one. How do you think the series is going? And do you think you're making any inroads into Influence and Influencer? And two, do you consider me an influencer?
Okay. I will answer in two parts as you asked it in two parts. So part A of the question is, have I feel that I influence the influencer in any way? To some extent.
Okay.
I feel that I have put my influence in place as far as being a representative of our community, the smaller channel community, and reaching out to the larger channels and the more influential channels within our community, and being able to bridge that gap in a way where we're able to have a conversation without having people, quote unquote, being starstruck by the larger channels. Because the one thing I do pride myself on is being able to have a conversation with members of our community with channels of all different sizes the same way or differently. Now, listen, we had this conversation. We know each other a little bit more than what I know a lot of the other interviews that I did. So it gets a little more comfortable going that way. But for the most part, I feel that most of the conversation we were very comfortable with each other.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing. And it gives everybody the understanding that, yeah, they have larger channels, but they're approachable. You can speak to them. You can reach out to them. Now, do I get all the answers that I want from everybody, from every single interview? No, absolutely not. Will I keep pushing to get those answers? I will try to push to keep going to the answers without basically alienating myself to everybody else that could potentially become another interview. So it's a delicate base. I could push if I could push, and I could be very aggressive if I need to. However, if I push too hard, I'll never get that interviewee again to come on the chat, and two, I may cause myself issues of bringing other people closer to us. So there's a fine balance,
For
a
sure.
very, very fine balance. So that's the way I look at it. I feel that I am accomplishing a lot of what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
And we'll see how it goes forward. We'll see if it keeps progressing and actually helps people. Because that's the whole point of the thing. Because let's do something different. I like that. That's why I was really, really happy to see you bring in comic tropes.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see. I want to see somebody that has 4,000 subscribers speaking to somebody that has 200 subscribers, 200,000 subscribers. I want to see somebody that has 2 million subscribers speak to somebody that has 50,000 subscribers. I want to see that. It makes me feel like it's more of a community that way.
Yeah.
Because we have
Absolutely.
a tremendous community. It's not just little cliques that we have like clustered here and there. It's a huge community. And if we're going to be talking about a comic book community, this is what we're doing right now. I'm talking to you right now. I'm talking to Jim Mint next week. Last week I spoke to Nerdy Girl. We have a nice blend of people. Some people are nicer, some people are not so nice, but I want to speak to everybody.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, if I happen to deal with somebody that's notorious and very a wretched human being, gloves are off. Listen, I have my issues with you with the Green Lantern shirt and stuff like that, but I try to take my bias away on that. But
The one DC shirt I own.
Unless it's Kilowog, I don't want to hear any Green Lantern. The Green Lantern. Ooh, I got a shiny ring. All right. Anyway, we're not even gonna get in there. So I'll answer part B to the question. Okay. So the part B of the question was remind me again what the question was.
More or less, like, so you consider me an influencer? Then is that kind of the understanding?
Yes, I absolutely do consider you an influencer.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. And I also consider every single person in the chat an influencer in their own way. Mm-hmm. And I also consider a lot of the other people that are in our community influencers. Now, there's different levels of influencers. Okay. And that's why I have a certain quota and a certain type of parameter that I'm looking at as far as the interviewees for this specific show.
Right.
I feel that there needs to be something of significance that person has done to actually made an impact on the community. Okay. There's a lot of different ways how to make an impact on the community. That person has to have a voice that's a little different from everybody else. So no offense to everybody that loves to show your comics all day, every day, and put them against the wall and do your look at me. You're more than welcome to do that. But in my personal belief, you're not influencing me in a way where you're intriguing me enough to want to speak to you. Sorry, guys. It's just the way it is. It's the truth. Now I'm going to lose about 200 subs after I said that, but that's okay. I'm not monetized.
Let's be honest. Nobody's still watching except for those in chat still. So you're fine.
Oh, you're probably right about that.
Okay.
I look at it from that perspective. And am I wrong? Am I right? I don't think I'm wrong because I actually read the Webster's dictionary definition of what an influencer is. And that's what it is. You are influencing people in a way, positive or negatively.
Yeah.
To do things.
Here's where I come to with that. And where it really depends on what your personal
video that you did with the phone and the LCS, you think you didn't influence anybody?
Right. No. And so that's the thing is, right, it depends on what your definition of influencer is. Like, is it more literal or is it more of a title? And or you could say more abstract, because the literal definition of an influencer, yes, I agree that I fall in that. It's weird for me to think that I fall in that camp, but I get that I do. But for me, what I think when I hear the word influencer, it's almost with a capital I, almost like a subtle implication there that we're talking about almost like a title that's given to people that's almost their job, is to influence people, usually, almost always via social media. And I think of people, like I've said it before, like Logan Paul, Kim Kardashian, like the people that, like, you're being paid to drink an energy drink on your Twitch stream or whatever. You're more like a brand influencer, which is where I think of that term mostly being associated with, like, the knee-jerk reaction I have to that term. That doesn't mean it's the only definition of the term. It doesn't mean it's the right definition of that term. But I think that when influencer is almost a title and it's almost a dirty word, that's generally what I associate it with.
Well,
And
where
there's
do
not
we
many
cross
people in
that
our
road?
niche that are that.
Where did we cross that word? I'm more of a literal guy. I always put.
I agree.
I personally, if somebody called me an influencer, I take pride in that.
I definitely don't think it has to be a negative thing, but I guess my first experiences with that word, I also used to work in the gaming industry, and there's a lot of gaming influencers, or gaming adjacent influencers, and that's just where I that term kind of, that's just the direct path association for me is that type of a thing. And it's just ironic to me because if you look at it that way, and I think some people do for sure, not everybody, but some people, there's almost not an influencer in the comic book collecting YouTube, Instagram niche that is even worth talking about. There almost isn't. Now, when you talk about things like affecting the market or affecting collecting habits or affecting like those sorts of things, yes, 100% there are influencers in this niche. So I think it just kind of depends. I'm just curious where people draw that line or where they put it,
I take it almost like badge of honor. You think of me enough to actually believe that I could influence you or somebody else, or I could influence Comic Toby right here to actually subscribe to this channel. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think K-pop's kind of talking about what I'm like when she says the mommy bloggers or influencers, people that get that comment. That's kind of like what I associate it with more, I guess. And I think I have a very personal reason why I associate this, and I'm curious about this topic, is because I made a video based on a Facebook comment that I found, which ended up being pretty explosive about the C2E2 events. And part of my title was, influencers cutting in line. And I made very sure to follow up on that story every step of the way and talk about it. It's been talked to death or whatever. But because I made that video, I know that some people were influenced or affected by the idea that comic book influencers were cutting in line. Whether or not I even think that's true anymore is a completely separate issue. But I was very careful to say in the video, like, that's what's being reported according to a couple people I've talked to, and this Facebook post. That was before I saw White Shadows videos, before, a whole thing happened with that. There was a lot more information I learned, but that is, I have firsthand experience that the Comics Elite situation, where I've had people that have talked to me because I influenced public opinion one way or the other, or at least raised the question. So it's fascinating. Like, I agree, I'm an influencer in that respect, but I'm always just curious what people's personal definition is.
I mean, you opened up a little bit of a door for our conversation right now, and let's just discuss about it a little bit if you have a minute or two to talk about this. So you did say that people cut lines, they get perks, maybe because they are quote unquote influencers or whatever the case is. I'm going to look at it from this aspect. Somebody builds up their name, their reputation. They bring a following with them. There's a certain kind of cachet and respect because of what they've been able to accomplish in their own little sector, whether it's in the YouTube world, in the IG world, whether it's social media world, whether it's television, whether it's a celebrity, whatever the case is. And they are able to get some perks because of it. Okay. So, like, let's say you're waiting online in a restaurant and Madonna walks in and gets a table right away. Do you think Madonna has earned the right to be able to get a table right away?
Earned the right. I get caught up on words too. That it earned the right.
Just look at the body of work she's done, the reputation he has. First of all, it's going to make the restaurant look great having Madonna sitting at their table and eating.
Yeah, it's
because it goes both ways. Don't forget about that. It's a weird dynamic.
Yeah, it is.
It's a weird
So for me,
dynamic.
it depends on where I'm at in relation to it, right? Like standing completely outside the situation is one thing, but if I'm in line before her, waiting for her, and all of a sudden she gets in, it's going to affect me a lot differently than if I hear about that story the next day from somebody that experienced that. Or if, I see it happen, like, in the news or something. Right. So I think that's interesting. And I also just to be clear,
that does happen all the time. I'm saying Madonna, it could be J-Lo, it could be
100% happens all the time.
whatever you want.
Yeah. I had
celebrity.
I had one of the dudes from the league walk into my store. I ran a store in a mall that specialized in like tech and drones and that kind of stuff. And he was hoping we had a cell phone battery, I think. And I recognized him immediately. And I was into comedians and stuff. He's a comedian, and I was just like, "Oh my God, you're you!" And immediately started helping him over other people. So that you could say like I was starstruck by him in that situation. Then again, it wasn't exactly like I was ignoring 50 other people to talk to him. It was people that were already browsing or whatever. But still, I understand it. It makes perfect sense. But is it right? I don't know. I don't know if it's really right. Like it's one of those things where
is it right to overpass other people if everything was equal? No, it's not.
Yeah,
but the thing in life is not fair in a lot of different cases. And if you were that Madonna, if you were that, I don't know, name your celebrity. If you were that Al Pacino that walked into the place, you probably would have that demand that you get that service right up front, or you'd leave.
You could. I mean, I understand it.
You probably would.
You got to weigh the business, the public persona, and everybody else differently depending on which part of the equation you care about. Like, I want the business to be successful if I'm the customer at the restaurant or whatever, and maybe I want them to be able to talk about it on their social media or get that kind of coverage. That'd be a good thing for them. They stay in business longer. I get to go eat there longer. But there's a fine line. Everything needs a balance. It's kind of almost situation by situation. But I do got to go back to what you first said when we started talking about this hypothetical. You said that I said that people were cutting in line. So I actually never said that. I said that it's being reported by somebody who says they were there. And I'm very specific on that. And that's
I apologize. Poor choice of words.
It's okay. Because it's just one of those little things that I think, again, there's a lot of people that have like this assumption about stuff that happened like at that event. And I've talked to a bunch of people that were there. And I have a pretty clear picture. There's contradictions between some of them. But there's a lot of common threads. There's people I know didn't talk to other people directly that were there. There's people I know that, no one here probably knows that I've talked to that were there. And there's people I know that everyone here knows that I talked to that were there. And I don't really believe people actually cut in line, other than people at the head of the line were given the ability to buy multiple copies, which you could view as a type of cutting.
Which, by the way, Nerdy Girl did confirm during her interview.
Yeah,
she did confirm. They gave her as many as she wanted. Should she feel guilty about getting as many as she wanted? I don't think so.
I think and I definitely don't want to rehash this, but where I always fell on that is it's completely up to the retailer. If the retailer was saying, "Yeah, sure, we want you to buy as many as you can buy," I personally think that's the incorrect policy. I think it should be a limit of X copies. And if you buy those copies, feel free to get back in the back of the line. I'm
with you. Yeah. I'm definitely with you on that.
2, 10. I don't really, where you said it kind of depends on the size of how many you have and everything. And that could be a risk too, because I understand that, maybe there was no demand and that first person would have bought all of them. And then the next people are like, give me that other cover instead. I get that, but just how it is.
It is. Here's the other thing. People don't factor this in. People are waiting online, right?
Yeah.
They're thinking, I'm going to buy 1 or 2 copies or whatever. I'm buying one for my person. All of a sudden, they see a major seller, a well-known seller, run up to the front and buy a bunch of them. What's that going to put in their heads? Maybe I should pick up a copy or two myself.
Yeah.
Extra. Maybe I should
in
pick
that
up
situation. Sure.
You think that doesn't affect the seller in any way? You think that doesn't promote their business to sell more copies and sell out of the run?
Well, and think about the ripple effect. So what people may not understand is how this worked for this particular comic book is there were multiple con exclusives available from different vendors that morning, and people essentially picked and chose which lines they wanted to wade into to try to get those early copies. Well, if you got passed up and you were one of the other exclusives, well, then your exclusive wasn't like the hit of the show, right? Like there weren't people posting about it early on. You weren't getting that exposure. And, you were that restaurant that maybe said, no, Madonna, you can't kind of head in front of these people. We're going to make you wait like everybody else.
That's the point I'm trying to make, because I could guarantee you if I was sitting on that line and I saw a character like Comic Tom, Nerdy Girl, something like that, and they go in and pick up 50 copies of this book that I'm waiting online for, guess what I'm going to do? Where I was going to buy maybe a copy, maybe two to give somebody or whatever the case is, I'm going to buy 5-10 copies at that point. Because I'm like, they're going to boost that thing to the hell.
I think Chip even said something like that in his first videos. I think he said he bought a graded copy when he wasn't originally planning to because he saw that happening.
Bingo.
Chip is White Shadow, if you don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well-known community member. Hasn't been doing much stuff. He disappeared a little bit, but he'll be back. Yeah. But great guy. But you get what I'm saying? There's a back and forth, and there's a dynamic to it. There's a lot of animosity, a lot of hate that happens, and a lot of like throwing of stones at each other as far as when they see stuff. But there's a business component that people don't recognize. I was at the New York Comic Con with the whole Peach Momoko fiasco.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was there. You know what people were doing? They exaggerated in a big way. I know you had somebody that was there as well. They exaggerated as far as people going and cutting lines and bringing like a short box of books to her to sign. And those people that are taking the short box of books to her were taking it and literally dropping them off to her to give them back later on that day or later on the next day. They weren't seeing signs on the spot. That's what people didn't realize. And there were people, you want to talk about influencers, how about people that had VIP passes that paid extra? You paid extra to get a VIP pass. They were jumping the line because they had a VIP pass. I'll tell you something. I didn't get a VIP pass because I could care less about signing books and stuff like that. I really don't care about that stuff. And I didn't feel like waiting on lines, whether I had a VIP pass or not.
Yeah.
But if I bought a VIP pass, now you're going to say, hey, Journey, you're an asshole. If I paid that extra money, triple the amount of what the normal ticket would have cost to get a VIP pass, you better damn guarantee I'm going to be one of these people that's saying I'm jumping the line and I'm going to get my money's worth out of this VIP pass. People don't realize that.
Just to clarify, it depends though, because each show is a little bit different about this, and each vendor can be different about this, and even at each show. Sometimes the VIP pass allows you in early. Sometimes it allows you to cut in certain lines, etc. So it depends on what the qualifications are with that pass.
I'm talking about those specific lines.
Yeah. Okay. Just double check.
It gave you accelerated access.
Yeah.
So you paid for it, right?
Yeah.
Should you feel bad for everybody that's waiting online? I paid extra money to get this.
Yeah.
What makes you any different from the influencers, the quote unquote influencers? You paid extra money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the only what makes you different, I think the thing you could argue there is that's a system that's in place that everybody has access to. Whether or not you can afford it is a different question, or whether or not you feel like it's worth it is a different question. But when you talk about an influencer being given that same perk, then they are completely sidestepping that system.
They are, but
so
again,
that's the difference.
Yeah, but in that situation, it wasn't that wasn't the case as far as that was the situation, because I saw with my own eyes,
right?
And I saw when it got ugly and everything like that. I saw a lot of that.
Yeah.
She's at fault for a lot of that as well. As nice as a woman as she is and stuff like that, she should not have given that many signatures at that low of a price. Maybe a couple to a person instead of giving 10 to a person, and basically causing that whole kind of ruckus.
But when you say to blame, I like. Well, I understand literally what you mean. I do think it's important to point out that I think that was a learning lesson for her.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, because that was her
She'll never do that
first
again.
experience in so many ways.
She will never do that again. I can guarantee that.
So, you know, but it's like the whole thing where, you know, it's kind of the moral quandary. If your child leaves their bike out on the front lawn and it's stolen the next morning, is it their fault it was stolen, or is it the thief's fault that it was stolen? And a lot of people say it's the child's fault. Why'd you leave your bike out on the lawn? And like, really, yes. I mean, they might share some of the blame, and you might kind of say that was negligent, but really the thief's still the one that stole it. And I think it kind of depends on, you know, how you examine it a little bit.
Well, you also talk about a child with a child's mind.
Right. Well, yeah, that too. But you can you know, shift that example.
I'm sure there's a lot of people that are in a community that are older people that have children's minds as well. So yeah, I guess you can apply that. You know, so it works.
Yeah.
But you get what I'm saying. Like the whole influence thing is something that has been reversed in what the true definition needs to be. And I don't know where that crossroads is that we reached as far as changing what it means, but I'm a very literal guy.
Sure.
This is what it means. Therefore, I'm not gonna hold back from it.
What? So for me, the only thing the final thing I would say about that is there is a group of people in our community that use that as a negative term to describe people. And so if you're going to be literal about it, you have to kind of separate, or more rather, if you're actually going to be those people who says, like, you know, those influencers, you know, the influencers, we all know who I'm talking about, right? Those people. If you're going to talk about it in that way, you got to kind of like do a little work to separate yourself from the literal crowd, because the literal crowd, it's more of just a word that, you know, they influence what other people do. Where there's another group of people that talk about it as in if like that is, you know, a pejorative term, basically. I think that's kind of that's the real like line I see is, you know, there's people that don't want to be part of that group because they don't want to be lumped in with other people. And there's people that are, you know, going around, you know, basically that's the red letter of our day in our particular group in some circles.
The bottom line is you're branded with a certain label. It's what you do with that label.
Yeah.
You know, you're branded with a term like influencer. It's what you do with that influence that you hold in your hands.
100%.
And whether you're using it for, let's use it in comic book terms, for good or for evil. You know, when somebody's branded with the name, with the label of being a celebrity, whether they A, B, C, or D, F, or Z celebrity, it doesn't matter. When you're branded with that, with that term as being a celebrity, you could easily migrate from being a celebrity to somebody that's notorious.
Yeah.
But they're both celebrities in their own different way.
Yeah. Well, and that speaks very, very deeply to me, because I made that video about C2E2. That was one of the bigger points in my channel. Was a lot of people watch that video. I think it's actually my most watched video, if I'm not mistaken. And about a week later, I made a very clear point to say, okay, if I'm being an influencer right now, and that's what's happening with me right now, I'm going to do this stream where I'm going to clear up all the misconceptions I can clear up about this situation, the stuff that I've learned since I made that video, and stuff people that were repeating all over the place that was wrong. And I'm going to give the community a chance to ask their questions, talk about stuff, raise all the points. And the whole theme of that show was, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. And I've heard several people that were involved in that incident now use that term, which is kind of interesting. You know, could be congruent thinking. I'm not saying that they got it from me or anything like that, but I do hope that that's kind of one of the things that people who do have influence in this community are starting to realize is that, you know, like a lot of the content I do is about trying to get people. It's like, it's not so much to think a certain thing, it's to think for yourself.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a noble pursuit. I hope people agree. And you know, like, I don't want anybody to arrive at the same answer that I came to. I want them to arrive at their own answers. But I
You did
want
hit
them
a
to
point.
try.
You did hit a point as far as thinking about how they could sway and how they can influence people in a certain way. Because I think that a lot of the people that are the quote, I keep saying this, quote unquote influencers that have a certain influence over certain communities, oftentimes are not even aware of what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're just being themselves.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it will influence people to do certain things because they think that's the cool thing to do, or whether it's that's what they're doing, so we need to do the same thing, or polarize them the opposite way and basically to turn around and say I hate them because of what they do in that kind of situation. You know, the key is to be very, very knowledgeable. I'm sure that you have been very thoughtful as far as every step of the game that you've gone, especially after you got a certain type of following on your channel, that there are people that actually are listening to you and might actually do what you're saying that they do. And you're
Yeah.
careful of that. Very, very careful of that.
Extremely.
I become very, very mindful of that as I went to 100, 200 subscribers. And all of a sudden, I found out that even though I have a small following, I have a handful of nuts that actually listen to everything I say. They listen to my nutty stuff. So I have to be a little bit careful as far as how nutty I really get and how much of a joke or serious they take a lot of the stuff I say. You know, and it really is a delicate line. And we should all truly, truly embrace being influential to other people around us and be mindful that we should think a little bit before we open our mouths or do something.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line. That's basically why I'm doing this, why we're having this conversation, why I accuse everybody. I believe that everybody is an influencer in their own different way.
Right.
You know, and we should take that and basically move forward in a productive way. But you know, we have drama in life.
Yeah.
People love drama. Drama sells.
Very much does. And people, you know, I've been guilty of it too. Like the thing that I try to do, you know, make a meme about something. That's my favorite thing to do. But I'm also very aware of, like, you know, there's memes I've made there. I'm like, I can't share this. I can't share it because, yeah, it would get a lot of eyes. It would get a lot of likes. Like, people would share it. But it's, you know, it's funny to me. But I know that it would also affect somebody if I put it out there in a certain way. And then that's true of, like, making videos, making content. Like, you know, I've told you this before. I don't know if maybe it was on stream. Like, if my only goal was to get as many followers as I could, if that was my actual goal, it's not. If I wanted to do that, I could be very successful at that. I would compromise a lot of moral integrity to do that, and I can't do that. Just as a personal value I have, I can't do it.
Do you think there's a balance that you could take as far as keeping your morals intact and actually growing and making a living off of making content?
Yeah, I do, and I have to realize that, you know, because I do kind of pay attention to things like metrics. I do kind of pay attention to, you know, comments and stuff like that. Like, and I like I said, I want people to watch what I'm making and enjoy it. Like, I feel like, you know, I could just purely be up here in a video and don't care what anybody says at all. And in a lot of ways, I'm not beholden to anybody. Like, I'm always going to speak my truth about things. But if I could go down that path, I could. There's every time
truth, my truth.
Yeah. Well, right. The way I see it.
That's a very triggering word.
It is. Let's just put it that way. The things I feel in the core, like if I come to a crossroads and if I if I see two paths and I'm like, okay, this path is completely honest. It's not very sexy, but it's going to take me, down this path. If I see this path, okay, I know I can make this go this way, and I know a lot of people would be interested in that and watch it, and it would get a lot of views. But it also puts a negative spin on things, or it also implies that there's drama or stuff that people are gonna, go. If that's the choice, and I ask, deep down in the core of my being, which one do I actually believe or think I should go down? It's always going to be this first path. And oh, sorry, by the way, yeah, Agu, I don't call people followers. Like, I don't know, you can call it subscribers, but then it's like on Instagram, it's followers. Like it kind of depends on what platform we're talking about.
I call them journites.
Journites, Bronze Agers, Bronze Age heroes. I have terms like that too. But basically, here's what I never want a decision like that to be the first thing that comes to mind, to be the most important factor. Children of the Night. I love that.
That's my favorite one.
Yeah. So it's just and I will tell you, I know straight up that a lot of people don't ask themselves those questions that make this kind of content. Maybe as often as I think they should is the best way to put that. But if I think if you're not asking yourself those kinds of questions and you're just full steam ahead trying to like just become successful, more power to you. That's certainly a valid. I mean, that's a lot of people will argue that that's a very pure YouTube experience, for example. That's fine. But you know what? I can tell you that if that's the path you're following, you're probably not going to have me as a follower or as a subscriber or whatever you want to call it.
Or the Children of the Night.
Yeah. There you go.
I tell you, I know it's been used, it's a cliche, but it's probably growing up, it's been one of my favorite things I ever heard, like in any late night thing going on. The Children of the Night.
I love it too, and I'm a night owl, as you've learned, mostly due to crazy insomnia and anxiety and that kind of stuff kind of keeps me up. But the other term that came to mind, I don't know if you've ever used this, insomnomaniacs.
A little wordy, a little long.
Oh, fine. I see how it is. Children of the Night is less wordy than a one word. I get it. I like
Insomnomaniacs. Yeah, I will make a poll because I just discovered how to make polls, by the way.
Is there? So there must be one up right now, huh? Because I see people talking about Fire Guy Ryan by Sam in chat.
There is actually one right now. Do you want me to show you what it is?
Sure. Let's see it.
All right. Let me share the screen with you and show you where we're at on the poll rates. Just give me a second to expand it, and then we'll share the screen. Okay. Because that's what we do here. We're technologically advanced. Hold on. All right. Can you see what I see?
Hold on. See if I can help you out here. Geez. Oh boy. All right. Not for real. So Jeff, the Golden Age Guru, Comics Explained, Automatic Comics, and Fire Guy Ryan. Interesting. I am not familiar with. I mean, I know who they are. I'm only familiar with Comics Explained, though. I would say.
Are you? You're not familiar with Fire Guy Ryan? He's actually.
I know who he is,
but
I don't know much about him. So from that perspective, in one way, Jeff, Automatic, and Fire Guy Ryan are kind of interesting to me because I don't know much about them personally. Like I don't watch their content for the most part. So that's interesting in its own way. Comics Explained, I am more familiar with their content, although I don't watch a ton of it, to be honest. But that's interesting. So they're all good choices. Nobody's going to lose with any of those guests.
I'm personally very shocked that it's that close between Jeff, Comics Explained, and Fire Guy Ryan. Personally, I would think it'd be a runaway vote as far as Comics Explained is concerned, because it's a major. It's going back to what we were talking about with comic tropes. It's a major channel. Right. It's 2 million. He's a very personable guy too. It's a 2 million plus subscriber channel.
But here it comes back to that thing. People don't know who Comics Explained is. People don't know who Comic Trips is if they watch your channel, my channel, Comic Tom, Automatic Comics. Does Jeff have a channel?
He has a somewhat defunct channel.
Okay.
Doesn't really use it much. He's a very big Instagram guy.
Right.
He's part of that Whatnot crew. He's Jeff the Golden Age guru. He has all the Golden Age books. Automatic Comics has a pretty well followed channel like you're on YouTube as well.
Automatic Comics, like so YouTube does this thing where it shows you people that watch your channel watch, right? Like that little section. And that's how I'm most familiar with Automatic Comics. And then does Fire Guy Ryan, is he only on Comic Tom's channel or does he have his own channel?
He does have a channel. And he has done a lot of appearances throughout YouTube.
Okay.
So, but he doesn't do content very often. Now, probably out of the 4 that you see up there, I'd probably have the most fun interview with Fire Guy Ryan.
Cool.
Because he's an open guy. He'll have a good conversation with me. And I think that he won't hold back too much. Jeff will be a little bit more conserved.
Yeah.
And with Rob, it's really, I'll be honest with you, Rob, I don't know. He's a wild card because I don't know if the personality that you see coming out of him on his channel will reflect onto an interview. I don't know if he'll be more reserved or he'll be his regular Rob self. And if he's the regular Rob self, he'd be an amazing interview, to be quite honest with you. Because he's so enthusiastic. You know what I'm saying? Like yes, he does it for a living. This is his job. This is his bread and butter. This is how he survives in life from his content. However, you could tell he genuinely enjoys the shit out of what he does. He just loves, he loves talking about how great Marvel comics are and how each story is amazing. Everything is amazing with him. Like, I've never seen him say something horrible about anything. He just loves everything. He has like a childish joy for everything he talks about. And it's never promoting to sell something. He's just talking about the stories.
Well, I think you're not going to go wrong with any of those guests. I am curious to see, who ends up being our next show after next week with Gem Man Comics Collectibles. That should be fun.
Yeah, a couple of the guys that you see on the board are right now in the middle of trying to set a date with, and a couple of the other guys I'm actually having a really hard time. No, actually, one of the guys I haven't approached yet, which I will be approaching. I'll say who it is that is giving me a hard time as far as the runaround. It's Comic Explained. I really want to get him on there, but the guy's like busy beyond belief.
I can only I'm sure that he probably at that level has somebody filtering stuff from him, and there's probably a lot of requests that come through too.
Quite possibly that's the case, but I'm relentless. Sooner or later, I'm going to get a hold of him. If I can't get a hold of him through the DMs and through the messengers and all this stuff, which I got some responses. I'm not going to say I got like Oni Stonewall. I will confront him in a actual con. I will. I'll get a hold of him one way or the other. If I'm a determined guy, if I want to get something done, I'm going to get it done one way or the other. It might take me longer than I want to, but I'll get it done. Yeah. So somebody was actually asking me, like, how do you get these people? Because I don't give up. I'm like a freaking pit bull. That's why.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, you've said this a couple times. I think people don't really understand sometimes what you don't know until you ask, for one thing.
Absolutely.
A lot of these people, it's almost like I'm sorry, this is probably a very of my generation way to phrase this, but a lot of people don't ask the hot girl to prom. Everybody assumes somebody else already asked them, that kind
or they're awkward, or they get starstruck, like we were talking before. Ryan is a cool guy. I love having conversations with Ryan. So he's gonna be funny. That Automatic Comics is called Ryan as well, I think. So, but I'm talking about specifically Fire Guy Ryan. He's a fun dude. I would have a blast just having him on because he could take a joke,
Well, so what I'm wondering is, did Agu mean Fire Guy? Because he's in Seattle area, so I assume maybe he's closer to him.
I'm pretty sure he's talking about Fire Guy.
Okay.
If you want Agu, if you want to clarify that for us, that'd be great.
So there you go.
But I definitely, and Gem He's gonna be an interesting conversation because he is a personable guy. He's not like one of these guys that are out of reach and like you can't have a conversation with. So I think Gem Mint is actually going to be a fun interview as well. And it's not going to be only about statues and omnibuses. So we're going to have a good conversation with him. You asked the hot girl's mom to the prop. Well, I can't blame you. Was the hot girl's mom just as hot as the girl herself, or did we go down in grade? That's the important thing. Because if the hot girl had a really ugly mom, then that's not quite that's not really that much of a challenge.
It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen.
Yeah, we have to like kind of put everything in line the proper way.
100%.
But on that thought, I think we've had a great interview. I don't
Yeah.
want to give everything away in once because I want to have you in the future as well.
Sure.
We want to leave something dangling for next time. They're a little bit extra, for we just don't want to give it all away on the first date.
I can tell you for sure that I have not begun to reveal all the secrets hidden in this beard.
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk to you, especially after you start your YouTube auctions.
Sure.
A little bit after you start again, how your experience is with that, and dealing and managing characters from our community, because that's going to be the biggest challenge out of everything, I believe. Because you're going to have some crybabies, you're going to have some people having different moral codes, you're going to have all kinds of crazy stuff that you're going to be a manager. That's what you're going to be. You're going to be a true manager.
Well, and it's not a rule that I'm a stranger to, so I think it's going to be just fine for the most part. I mean, there'll be things that come up, but the biggest thing is having systems in place to deal with those things before they happen.
Yeah. So on that thought, I want to leave everybody off with one last thing from you. I'm going to ask you if you can please share one last thing before we conclude and before we end, and thank everybody for joining us. Is there one piece of advice that you could give to anybody looking to start up or just started up a YouTube channel in order to get themselves more tied in with the community?
Just to get more tied in with the community itself.
Yeah, you thought I was going to ask you to grow. I'm
Right.
asking to get you tied in with the community.
To get more tied in with the community, well, I definitely think that if your goal is to get more tied in with the community, one thing you should do is be part of streams, like this one, for example. Make sure you're conversing with people, make sure you're not afraid to approach people. And that's people that you might view as kind of on your peer level, and that's people that you might view as being above your peer level. Get involved in that part of the community, and then find. This is kind of going back to how to win friends and influence people. Old school belief philosophy here. Find what you have to give to the community that nobody else can offer, or that nobody else is offering. What can you do for other people? Maybe that's helping with some charity work. Maybe that's, making some people connected that you think are like-minded individuals. Maybe that's, having a different kind of a forum for people that, to say their opinion on something. There's different ways you can do that. Find what that is that you're passionate about, and don't give up, and keep going in that particular path. And don't be afraid to change if it doesn't work after a while. But that's one way to get connected to the community, because people will respond to that. If you think you're putting it out there and it's a positive force and it's getting people it's offering something that they're not getting somewhere else, they're going to be interested in that, and it's going to help build community.
Just one thing to that. Don't be shy.
Yep, exactly.
Just don't be shy. You're hiding behind a microphone, behind a keyboard. You could be Hercules behind there. Go out, be brave as you want to be. Nobody's going to judge you, and even if they do, who cares? You're behind a keyboard and a microphone. Be yourself, and don't be shy.
Right.
And on that note, Worm, if you're still there and you're listening, listen to this. Christopher, Bronze Age Nerd, thank you. Thank you for spending your time with us. Thank you for choosing this channel to do an interview with. Thank you for interacting with the chat. Thank you.
And thank you for having me. And thanks to everybody in the chat for being part of this. Everybody watching this that thought, hey, you wanted to tune in and watch part of this interview. I appreciate you doing what you do. Thank you very much.
Thanks everybody in the chat. I'm going to play the intro one more time and we are out of here because why? I like my intro. That's why.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you so much.